On my 40th birthday that my husband forgot, I went to a French restaurant at the invitation of my mother-in-law, Haley. As I was enjoying the meal with the kind Haley, Caleb, who was supposed to be at work, entered the restaurant with a woman I didn't recognize. They looked unmistakably like a couple, and I felt a surge of irritation. Suddenly, Marry You by Bruno Mars started playing in the restaurant. At a table away from us, Caleb proposed to the woman, saying, "I want to make you happy. Will you marry me?" The unfamiliar young woman, given a bouquet and a ring by Caleb, teared up and responded, "I'm so happy. Yes, I will." The surrounding people congratulated them, saying, "Congratulations, and how sweet." I exchanged glances with Haley and, with a smile and a knife in hand, approached Caleb. "Congratulations! What a wonderful proposal! I'm jealous." "Thank you." Caleb, oblivious and buoyed, replied. "You never did anything like this for me," I remarked. At those words, Caleb finally turned around, and his face turned ashen. "My name is Kinsley. I live with my husband Caleb and my mother-in-law, Haley. While mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issues are often a problem in society, in our case, Haley is a wonderful person who supports me more than the somewhat inattentive Caleb, so our relationship is good. Haley, who works hard and respects me for managing the house, is someone I respect for her straight-shooting and strong-willed nature. Both Caleb and I married at the age of 35, and although we couldn't have children, Haley would say with a smile, "It's okay not to have children. It's not all good having them." Having such a wonderful daughter-in-law is more than I could ask for. It'd be asking for trouble to want more. I was grateful for that perspective. 5 years into our marriage, I started to feel something off about Caleb. He began coming home extremely late, saying he had overtime, or not coming home at all, claiming he had to stay at work. Even on weekends, he would leave, saying he had to work. When he was home, he seemed distracted. On our anniversary, Haley and I hoped he would come home early for once, but Caleb didn't return until late at night. "What were you doing out so late?" "Working, of course." "Don't you remember what day it is?" "Huh? Was there something special today?" "I can't believe it. Today is our anniversary." "Oh, right. I forgot. Sorry." "Forgetting our anniversary and not coming home until this time." "Stop nagging. I forgot because I was busy with work. It's not like we're at an age to celebrate every little thing." "What are you saying?" "Kinsley has been feeling lonely because you've been coming home late and we can't spend weekends together. She just wanted to be with you on our anniversary. She's been waiting for you all this time. You better apologize more sincerely. You're gonna make it up to her later, right?" Haley chided Caleb, who was starting to get defensive. Caleb, feeling guilty, apologized. "Sorry. All this talk about work and overtime, but we've never had this issue before. Is it really work?" Haley voiced the concern I had been harboring. "It really is work. A major client's company went bankrupt, and now our company is at risk of going down with them. I've been swamped with work to prevent that from happening." "This is the first I'm hearing of this." "It's not something that concerns you or Mom. I just hadn't mentioned it. Besides, I'm exhausted from all the work. Let me sleep, and I'll make it up to you tomorrow." With that, Caleb hurriedly excused himself and secluded himself in his room without even taking a bath. Suspicious. I nodded in agreement with Haley's words. It was a relief to know I wasn't the only one feeling this way. The next day, Caleb came home on time, bringing a cake and a small bouquet. True to his word, he celebrated our anniversary, albeit a day late. After that, there were more days when he came home earlier, though not as before. However, I couldn't be genuinely happy. I wondered if he was just trying to cover up, having been suspected by Haley. And Caleb's distant demeanor hadn't changed. Gradually, the days he came home late or stayed out increased, returning to the way it was before. On my 40th birthday, he simply sent a message saying he'd stay at work overnight. without a word of birthday wishes. I had a bad feeling from the morning, and sure enough, it seemed he had forgotten. Really? Forgetting not just the anniversary but your wife's birthday too. Kinsley, I'm so sorry for my foolish son. No, Haley, you don't have to apologize. Please don't worry about it. As an apology, though it might not seem like much. I had a hunch this might happen, so I booked a table for two at a French restaurant near the station. Luckily, a cancellation opened up a spot at a good time. I thought if Caleb remembered, I'd let you two go, but since he didn't, how about we go together? It's my treat today. Really? Can we? French cuisine, and near the station too, that's a popular place, isn't it? You're exaggerating. It's the least I can do to make up for my son's oversight. The French place has a broad clientele and a casual vibe, and there are plenty of affordable options. I'm sorry it's not somewhere fancier. No, I'm thrilled, thank you so much. I'm glad to hear that. Well, it's about time for our reservation, shall we head out? The restaurant had a casual atmosphere, as Haley said, and there were even some flashy-looking young people. I was relieved it wasn't too upscale a French restaurant, as that would make me nervous. The young people seemed to be enjoying their meals, chatting and taking photos with their smartphones. Maybe they were YouTubers reviewing the restaurant. As soon as we were seated, Haley handed me a beautifully wrapped, fairly large box, saying, "This is a present from me." A present? Thank you. Inside was a brand new bag that I had been eyeing. Can I really accept something this nice? Thank you so much. Of course. Kinsley, you've always been so helpful. Please, accept it as a token of my appreciation. I hadn't expected my birthday, which I thought would be as uneventful as our anniversary, to turn out so wonderfully, and I nearly teared up. I'm blessed to have such a kind mother-in-law. Well then, shall we start the birthday celebration? Haley announced, and our dinner began. True to its reputation, every dish served at the popular French restaurant was delicious, nearly making our cheeks fall off. The course progressed smoothly, and just as we were about to finish the main meat dish, Haley suddenly fell silent and turned pale. Haley, is something wrong? When I asked, concerned, she pointed tremblingly towards the entrance behind me. Kinsley, look! Turning around, I couldn't believe my eyes. Caleb, who was supposed to be staying overnight at work, entered dressed in a stylish suit, accompanied by a young woman in a neat dress. Caleb was escorting her, arm in arm. I thought I was mistaken, but no matter how many times I looked, it was definitely Caleb. I was so shocked that I forgot to breathe for a moment, watching the two of them. Caleb, looking happy, didn't seem to notice us at all. Kinsley, this is... Yes. Probably. But should we watch a little longer? It's not confirmed it's cheating yet. Right. If Kinsley says so. Confused, we decided to continue our meal while keeping an eye on them. Fortunately, Caleb's table was far from ours, and he, being in high spirits, didn't notice us at all. I hoped it was a misunderstanding, but Caleb and the woman looked unmistakably like a couple from any angle. Was Caleb cheating with her all this while, claiming he was busy with work, facing a crisis at the company? Forgetting our anniversary, my birthday. Thinking about it, a deep anger welled up inside me. Suddenly, Caleb formally presented the woman with a bouquet of roses. Suddenly, Marry You by Bruno Mars started playing in the restaurant. It's a surprise proposal. The surrounding customers murmured before falling silent, their attention on Caleb and the woman. The young YouTuber started filming them, too. Listening closely, I could hear Caleb saying something to the woman. I'm sorry, I can't always be by your side. But Ellie, I want to make you happy. Caleb said, offering her an engagement ring. Will you marry me? The woman, tearfully accepting the bouquet and ring, replied. I'm so happy. Yes, I will. At the same time, warm applause and voices saying, "Congratulations," and "I'm jealous" filled the air. The song reached its climax, heightening the atmosphere. Wow, this is amazing. So this place does these kinds of services, huh? Got to see something good. The YouTuber commented to his camera. Caleb, how could you? I couldn't believe it. Not just cheating, but proposing. I looked at the woman Caleb called Ellie. Her face, brimming with pure joy upon receiving the proposal, had a refined and graceful air that didn't seem to belong to someone who would knowingly get involved with another's husband. Of course, appearances can be deceiving, but still. I glanced at Haley, who seemed to be looking at me, waiting for my reaction. Our eyes met. That foolish son. We can't let this go. Haley's eyes held a quiet rage. Yes, Haley. We took unused knives from the cutlery box, holding them in one hand as we made our way through the other customers towards Caleb. Congratulations! What a beautiful proposal! I'm so envious, I said, with the biggest smile I could muster. Thank you. Caleb, still buoyed, responded without realizing it was me. You never did anything like this for me. With those words, Caleb finally noticed and turned around cautiously. Then, seeing me smiling, he turned pale. Kinsley! Why? Why are you here? We came here at Haley's invitation. Right, Haley? I turned back to Haley, still smiling. Haley nodded back with a smile. Exactly. But I'm surprised. Who would have thought my son, who was supposed to be staying at the company because of its critical situation, who is already married to Kinsley, would be proposing to another woman? Can you explain what's going on? Seeing the knife we were holding, Caleb turned even paler but managed to squeeze out some words. It's not what it looks like. What do you mean, not what it looks like? This is, not a proposal or anything. She's a junior at work. I just wanted to thank her because she's always working hard with me. And since it's her birthday today, I was just giving her a present and celebrating. Caleb's clumsy excuse caused a stir among the onlookers. It clearly looked like a proposal. What are you trying to hide? He's already married, really? Even the staff at the restaurant were puzzled by the situation. Thought it was a successful proposal, but then the wife shows up. Looks like we've stumbled into a real-life drama, so it's emergency live streaming time, said the YouTuber, starting to film us. I pressed on, not caring, and focused on the sapphire ring on the woman's left ring finger. Interesting. A bouquet of roses and that ring, which obviously looks more expensive than the one you gave me, as a birthday present for your junior, huh? Well. By the way, today is my birthday too. Did you remember that? Caleb's face showed realization. He had, indeed, almost forgotten. Caleb, what have you been saying since earlier? A junior? A birthday present? But who are these people? The woman, who had been confronting Caleb, clearly did not know he was married. If she had known, she wouldn't have failed to recognize me as his wife. I introduced myself to her with a smile. Nice to meet you. I'm Caleb's wife of 5 years. He's always in your care. I emphasized the word wife particularly strongly. I am Caleb's mother. I had no idea my son was in a good relationship with you while already having a wife. Haley introduced herself to the woman with a full smile. The murmuring around us grew louder. His wife, so he really was married. Proposing to another woman while married? That's the worst. Poor wife. Take back my congratulations. What, a real-life drama? Are they shooting a drama or something? More onlookers gathered around. The woman turned pale at our introduction and muttered, "No way." Then, with tears in her eyes, she glared at Caleb. These were tears of a different kind than those of joy she had shed earlier. What do you mean? Caleb, you never told me you had a wife. No, you're married. And you proposed to me while having a wife. What does that mean? I've always trusted you. It's not like that, Ellie. It's not an affair. I was serious. I intended to marry you. That's why, before getting married to Ellie, I was planning to divorce Kinsley. Caleb stopped himself, realizing he had dug his own grave. But it was already too late. So you admit to the affair? The mistress was also deceived. Wow, that guy is the worst on so many levels. Criticism towards Caleb from those around us grew even larger. This is definitely a showdown. Saw something incredible. The stream is hitting an all-time high. The YouTuber was excited as if he had caught something great on camera. Huh, you were planning to divorce me and remarry. Surrounded by 3 women and the focus of everyone in the restaurant, Caleb was sweating profusely. Suddenly, the woman stood up. In the next moment, she swung her purse full force and smacked Caleb right across the face. The sound of the hit echoed throughout the restaurant, and the previously buzzing crowd fell silent for a moment. Ugh! Caleb groaned in pain, holding the spot where he was hit. At that moment, thunderous applause erupted from around. Even louder than when the proposal was accepted. Way to go! Serves that loser right. Wow, caught an amazing moment on camera. The woman, without looking back at Caleb, took off the ring, slammed it on the table, and ran out of the restaurant, leaving the bouquet behind as well. Caleb, having been hit with a hard purse, was still groaning in pain. Are you okay? I couldn't help but ask, to which Caleb looked at me with tears in his eyes. Then, as if driven by some thought, he stood up and, without caring about the onlookers, began to apologize. Kinsley, I'm sorry, please forgive me. What are you doing? I just lost my mind for a moment. The only person I truly love is you. So, it seemed he thought my kind "are you okay" would somehow make me forgive him. What does he mean by "just lost my mind for a moment"? After he planned to divorce me and even proposed to that woman. The crowd seemed to think the same, mercilessly mocking Caleb's disgrace. Ew, apologizing like that here is so cringy. This guy is pathetic. After proposing and all, what's he even saying? They really say you're the only one I love after cheating, huh? People started filming Caleb with their smartphones. Look up at me? When I deliberately spoke in a kind tone, Caleb lifted his face, showing a relieved expression as if he thought he was forgiven. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving such a man. Looking down at Caleb, I said in a cold voice, "You were planning to divorce me, right? As you wish, I'll divorce you. And I'll be seeking alimony for adultery. I won't ask it from her. She seems to be a victim too." Caleb's expression turned from relief to utter despair. No, please! I won't do it again. Wait, today's your birthday, right? Then, let's celebrate your birthday here, all 3 of us. That's fine, right? I'll make it up to you. Here, take this. Look. In a desperate attempt, Caleb offered me the bouquet and ring that the woman had left behind. I was beyond angry, I was dumbfounded. Did he really think giving me something he intended for his affair partner would make me happy? Wow! Giving your wife something meant for your affair partner. How stupid can this man be? It seemed everyone around us was taken aback. The sapphire ring Caleb was offering, naturally, was not my birthstone. Stop this disgrace. Prepare yourself to pay alimony to Kinsley. And to that woman you were proposing to as well. Haley scolded Caleb. Why to Ellie as well? You pretended to be single and deceived that woman. In that case, she has the right to claim compensation for the violation of her chastity rights. Don't you even know that? Furthermore, I'm disowning a scum son like you. Mom. You're joking, right? You're abandoning your own son over this. Over this. After deceiving 2 women, you think over this is going to cut it? I'm not joking. As of today, leave the house and never show your face again. A man like you is no son of mine. Ugh. Caleb broke down crying, huddled on the floor. Haley, who detests dishonesty, could truly not forgive her son's actions. There was no falsehood or hesitation in her declaration of disownment. The drama seemed endless, and the YouTuber's broadcast was more popular than ever. The emboldened YouTuber approached Caleb with his camera, saying, "Rejected by the mistress, divorced by the wife, and disowned by the parent, you've lost everything, huh? How do you feel now, huh? Tell me." Caleb, attempting to escape the broadcast, stood up and tried to flee the restaurant.
"Wait! Don't run away!"
Haley grabbed Caleb by the collar. Then, Caleb fell backwards onto the floor with a thud. The onlookers burst into laughter. More people began filming Caleb, finding the situation amusing.
Ugh!
Caleb, at a mature age, started crying like a child while lying on the floor. It must have been the pain, humiliation, and shame reaching their limits. Haley and I were troubled. We couldn't cause any more trouble for the restaurant. We had already caused enough disturbance. Surely, the restaurant staff must have been thinking, what a day this has turned out to be.
Stop crying. Pay the bill, and let's go home.
Haley and I lifted the sobbing Caleb, paid the bill, and repeatedly apologized to the restaurant staff and other customers for the inconvenience. A grown man crying in public like a child, leaving his mother and wife to apologize for his actions, was truly pitiful. The YouTuber was the only one who said, "No, you gave us something good to watch. Thank you." On the way to the municipal office in the car, Caleb, thrown into the back seat, cried his eyes out, begging for forgiveness, but both Haley in the passenger seat and I driving ignored him the entire time. After picking up divorce papers at the office, we headed home. Then, Haley and I forced a reluctant Caleb to sign the divorce papers, kicked him out of Haley's house along with his belongings, and took away the keys. Caleb banged on the door yelling, "At least let me stay tonight," but all I replied was, "I thought you were staying at the company tonight." The next morning, after staying at a hotel, when Caleb went to work, it seemed the whole office had learned about Caleb being married while proposing to his mistress, deceiving her, and his disgraceful behavior in the French restaurant, as everyone looked at him disdainfully and whispered behind his back. Apparently, the YouTuber's live stream and uploaded video from the previous day quickly became a hot topic, with tweets from those present, photos of Caleb apologizing and falling, clips from the YouTube video, and other angles filmed by other customers circulating online, spreading Caleb's lowest moments in disgrace across the internet. The office was abuzz with the rumors. The notorious video had many highlights, from the proposal to the wife's appearance, the mistress hitting him, apologizing, divorce and disownment declaration, and the fall. Attracting viewers who love satisfying stories, dubbing it real-life satisfying drama, with views skyrocketing. The video, titled "The Man Who Proposed to Another Woman While Having a Wife Loses Everything," even made it to compilation sites. "You're seriously messed up, man. What the heck were you thinking? Your life's over," Caleb was told by a close colleague, turning his face ashen. No wonder. His disgrace was floating forever in the sea of the internet. However, Caleb's misfortune didn't end there. He was called into the president's office that very day and was fired.
"Caleb, what have you done?"
Caleb's affair partner, Ellie, turned out to be the daughter of a major client's CEO. The client's CEO found out about the video through rumors among employees and, after watching it, became furious upon discovering his daughter had been deceived.
"Our client is furious with our company. I need you to take responsibility and resign,"
he was told. Caleb couldn't offer any defense. The truth was, he had approached Ellie knowing who she was, hoping to benefit from her status, even aspiring to possibly become the next president through her. There was no room for excuses. Now jobless, Caleb found it impossible to get hired anywhere else as his disgrace had become toy fodder on the internet, known to every company's HR department. I relentlessly filed for alimony against him. And Ellie, too, filed for damages against Caleb for deceiving her into a relationship under the pretense of being single, violating her right to chastity.
"You enjoyed dating me too, right? Why are you demanding alimony from me? I've already lost my job. Give me a break."
Caleb pleaded. But such an argument was futile. In their last meeting, Ellie coldly told him, "Every moment I spent happy with you is now a dark history," under the watchful and intimidating glare of her father, the company president. Eventually, Caleb had to pay a hefty sum in alimony to both me and Ellie, forcing him to take on debt. He finally got a job at a labor-intensive, understaffed factory known for its harsh conditions, where he worked exhaustingly hard, hiding his face with a mask. Too busy to even come home, Caleb's lie about his work became his reality. In a male-dominated factory and too busy to find another woman, it's unlikely any woman would be interested in Caleb after such a public downfall. Now, Caleb is afraid to even show his face outside, always wearing a mask when he does. Honestly, I never imagined things would turn out this dire, but it was all Caleb's doing. The saying goes, bad news travels fast, but in today's digital age, a digital tattoo remains forever, a frightening thought. Haley apologized to me numerous times, saying, "I'm so sorry my foolish son caused such trouble. I can't believe I raised him to turn out like this."
It's not your fault, Haley. Having you on my side was truly reassuring. Thank you.
It's not uncommon for some mothers to blame the wife when their son cheats, defending their son by saying, "It's the wife's fault for being cheated on." I'm grateful Haley wasn't like that. Yet, it makes me wonder how Caleb turned out this way despite being raised by such a respectable mother. Kinsley, thank you. Would you mind staying in touch? You're already like family to me, and even if you divorce Caleb, I'd like you to stay here. Yes, I'd also prefer that if you wish so. After such an exchange, we continue to live together and get along like a real family. Later, Ellie also came to apologize. Though I didn't know he was married, I'm truly sorry for having an affair with Caleb. I was too shocked at the time to apologize. I'll also pay the alimony. I told her, "Please, don't apologize. There's no need for alimony. You're a victim of that man too." Haley added, "That's right, Ellie. You're not to blame. If anyone should apologize, it's me for raising such a foolish son. I'm sorry." After our conversation, Ellie insisted on making amends and ended up treating us to coffee. Now, the three of us occasionally get together for tea, having become good friends. After being struck by a car and suddenly forced into a life in a wheelchair, what my husband handed me was a completed divorce form. "It's your own fault you're in that wheelchair. I don't want to deal with caregiving. Let's get a divorce. I'm not going to clean up your mess," he said coldly, plunging my world into darkness. After 40 years of supporting him, I couldn't accept this treatment. A flame of anger ignited within me. My name is Evelyn. I had just turned 60. I've been married to Liam, who is 3 years older than me, for 40 years. We met during our community college days. Back then, I looked forward to having coffee at the small cafe where he worked. The cafe was run by his parents, and he, leveraging his appearance, worked there as a waiter. He listened empathetically to my complaints, which he probably found uninteresting, and I was drawn to how he could chat so friendly with every customer. After spending a year making my approach, it paid off, and we started dating. When I graduated from community college, we decided to get married. Though some friends said it was too soon, I wanted to give my elderly grandmother, who raised me in the absence of my parents, some peace of mind, so we went ahead and got married. As expected, my grandmother seemed reassured by our wedding but passed away before she could hold a great-grandchild, leaving my uncle in a distant city as my only blood relative. However, I wasn't lonely. Because my in-laws treated me just like their own daughter. Living with them in their home, just a 10-minute walk from the cafe, was not suffocating at all but truly comfortable, and I fully experienced the joy of family life. My in-laws taught me the cafe business, both strictly and kindly, and about a year after we got married, our adorable daughter Sophia was born, bringing me to the height of happiness. Shortly thereafter, my in-laws decided to retire. They probably wanted to hand over the cafe during the good times. It seems they decided to move to a second home they had bought at some point, and though I felt a bit lonely, I sent them off with a smile since it was their decision. Soon, the cafe officially became my husband Liam's responsibility, and I joined him in running it. Fortunately, I had been thoroughly trained by my in-laws in everything from the menu recipes to bookkeeping right after getting married, and Liam had likewise learned by their side, so the cafe continued to do well with our regular customers sticking by us. However, as the national economy improved and my in-laws were no longer around to keep an eye on things, Liam started to slack off at work.
I'm gonna head out for a bit. Hey, it's almost lunchtime. Can't you see I'm swamped here?
I'd respond, showing him our daughter sleeping in the baby carrier as he hurried to leave the cafe. Liam had insisted we not leave our daughter until she was over 3, so I worked at the cafe with our young daughter strapped to my back.
If you're not here and she gets upset or needs a diaper change, and I have to step away, then there will be no one to look after the customers. It's a problem.
It's fine. It's mostly regulars who come anyway. Besides, making them wait a bit or cutting corners won't hurt our prices.
No.
I was at a loss for words at his carelessness, which seemed out of place for someone in the food service industry, but what he said wasn't entirely wrong. At that time, we were experiencing a rare economic boom, and our cafe, like others, had plenty of customers who spent generously. Our menu items ranged from $20. A minor slip-up here and there, and our regulars, who make up the bulk of our clientele, would forgive us. Newcomers would probably let it slide at these prices too, my husband thought. The leniency was such that there were customers who would tip me, seeing how hard I was working while juggling child-rearing. Unlike today, the online information wasn't widespread, so word of mouth, for better or worse, didn't spread so easily. In fact, there were plenty of cafes offering lower quality than ours that still managed to stay afloat. However, I truly wanted our customers to leave feeling that was delicious, and I felt so relaxed, and I didn't want to tarnish the reputation of the cafe handed down by my in-laws. Customers, tables, meals, coffee, and even my daughter. I was managing everything attentively, working through my tasks. The small size of the cafe, with no real peak times, meant I could run it on my own, and thanks to the economy, we were making a decent profit. But that was the issue. Honey, we have an order. 2 new customers ordered sandwiches with coffee. I'm busy right now. You take care of it.
That horse I bet on hit big.
I was dumbfounded as my husband casually dismissed me and continued his conversation with a regular across the counter. Originally, my husband was in charge of the kitchen and I took care of the front of the house, but as he thought I could manage, he increasingly began to slack off. After finishing the prep work and opening preparations, he would chat with regulars or read the racing paper, merely observing me work as if it were someone else's business. If I complained, he'd retort with a nonchalant face, "You're managing fine on your own, I don't need to bother." Sometimes, he'd even leave the cafe during business hours to hang out, following an invitation from regulars. Around that time, with the passing of my in-laws one after another and the inheritance that came our way, it probably further fueled his tendency to laze around. But it wasn't just slacking off at work. Believing that household chores and child-rearing were women's duties, it was normal for him not to lift a finger even if our daughter cried, saying things like, "Change her diaper, or isn't it time for her baby food? Feed her." As a result, in his stead, I ended up leading a dizzyingly busy life, managing the cafe, household chores, and child-rearing all on my own. When our daughter reached elementary school, customers stopped spending money as freely. Prodded by our regulars, my husband finally started working again, but there was much to be desired in his work ethic after years of laziness. However, I couldn't just bluntly point it out. When I began to speak up, he, losing his motivation, used the cafe as leverage in our negotiations. Considering my in-laws' feelings, I had no choice but to give in. I swallowed the complaints I had about my husband, which were at the tip of my tongue, and decided to quietly support him to ensure the cafe's stability and sufficient revenue. As usual, he didn't help with housework or child-rearing, and his laziness hadn't gone away, but I told myself that supporting him was my role as a wife and worked desperately. Now, 40 years into our marriage, the cafe has survived numerous recessions and is still going strong. Our daughter, who helped out as the face of the cafe, has married a wonderful man, moved out, and is now the proud mother of a boy. Conversations with my husband have become less frequent, and we each have more time to ourselves, but that's not unusual for couples our age. I even think we get along better than other mature couples since we share meals and a bed. Despite the ups and downs, I take pride in how we've run the cafe and raised our daughter together. The only thing left was the matter of a successor. One day, when it started raining in the evening.
What should we do? I didn't expect it to rain and I don't have an umbrella. Do you have one?
No, I don't have one either.
Even though it's close, getting drenched at this time of year could lead to a cold. I don't want to risk that at my age.
As I sighed, my husband tossed me the keys to the bicycle that was parked at the cafe.
Get home before it gets worse. You can make it back before the rain gets too heavy on the bike. I'm going out to drink with the usual guys anyway, I'll lock up.
With that, he urged me to go home. Taking his word for it, I left the cafe first to start preparing dinner. About an hour later, as I was about to take a break, I realized I had left my smartphone at the cafe. My husband had said he was going out with friends for drinks, and being without my smartphone for even a night was troubling, as it was my means of contact in case of an emergency. Rushing back to the cafe to retrieve it, I was startled to see two figures moving in the darkness of the closed cafe. Thieves, perhaps? As I debated calling the police, my hand accidentally turned on the light. The sight before me nearly made my knees buckle. There stood my husband, with an unfamiliar woman embraced in his arms.
Why are you here?
Overcome by his flustered demeanor and the unmistakable atmosphere, I fled the scene. Panicked by my husband's act of betrayal, I didn't notice the flashing signal in front of me. In the next moment, car headlights blinded me, and I felt a sharp pain as I was struck, spinning around before losing consciousness. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed, with my disheveled daughter looking over me worriedly.
Thank goodness. Please come. My mother has woken up.
Piecing together the doctor and my daughter's story, it seems I had been hit by a car and had not woken up for 3 days. I hadn't had any ID on me, but fortunately, a regular customer who witnessed the accident was able to contact my husband. My daughter, having received the call from my husband, explained the situation to her son and husband and came to me that very day. A few days after regaining consciousness, with my family gathered in the doctor's office, I was confronted with a reality too hard to accept. I had suffered spinal cord damage due to the accident. I would never walk again, nor could I go to the bathroom on my own. I would need constant care and a wheelchair for mobility. The doctor's words left me speechless, and my husband and daughter seemed unable to hide their shock. However, I was not so weak as to despair over this. My daughter visited me every day, providing support both emotionally and physically. Thanks to her, I endured the treatments and started to adapt to life in a wheelchair. As I began to find mental space, I remembered the dreadful memories of the accident. Who was that woman? What was she doing in the dark? My daughter had brought my smartphone, which she had found and brought to me, but attempts to contact that woman went unanswered. As I pondered how to confront her the next time we met, my phone rang. It was a message from my husband. He said he wanted to talk. Was it an apology or an excuse? Deciding it was time to settle things, we agreed to have a discussion. The next day, my husband visited my hospital room. Since being informed about the wheelchair, he hadn't shown his face even once. The first words he uttered upon entering were not of concern or care but, "A private room, huh? Pretty luxurious." I suppressed my irritation at his insensitivity and quietly said, "I took advantage of the offender's offer. In addition to compensation for damages, they're covering all medical expenses and more." "Oh, played your cards right, huh? Then you must have gotten a hefty sum." "What's with that tone?
Don't talk about me as if I'm some sort of scam artist.
I raised my voice involuntarily at his lack of sensitivity, and he responded with a smirk. Don't get so mad. It's true a lot of money came in, right? Makes it easier to bring up what I've been wanting to say.
What?
I was speechless as he took out a small, folded piece of paper from his pocket.
Sorry to spring this on you, but I want a divorce.
It was a divorce paper.
What? Excuse me?
I did a double take. His actions were beyond anything I had anticipated, and I couldn't keep up.
Isn't it clear? I told you I had something to discuss. Are you serious?
Yes.
I've been fed up for a long time. I can manage the cafe just fine on my own, but you always had to butt in and nag, which was unbearable. But that cafe was passed down from your parents to me. It's important to me. That's where you're wrong. That cafe is mine. Even when I wanted to sell it because I was fed up with your nagging, you begged me on your knees not to sell. Well, at that time jobs were hard to come by. We didn't have any qualifications. If we gave up the job, it would have been a burden on our daughter, that much was clear. I've thought it was strange since then. The cafe was handed down to me, yet because of having a family, I couldn't even exercise my rights freely.
His shouting made me flinch. Blaming the family? I was dumbfounded by my husband, who treated us as if we were nuisances after all these years of supporting each other. He continued to vent as if releasing everything he had held back.
Even at home, you'd frown and fuss over the accounts. And using being busy as an excuse, even the housework was half-hearted, wasn't it? We were both working, and someone had to handle the accounts. It's not just that. It's ridiculous to have to check in with each other about everything, even when not doing anything, as if we were children.
As my husband listed his complaints, the trust one had built up for him over the years crumbled, and anger welled up inside me. Was he planning to gloss over his own betrayal? After what he did, I couldn't let him have the last word.
Staying in touch is common sense when you live together. Besides, you say you were just out playing, but was that really the case?
I pressed on as he struggled to find words.
That night, you were embracing a woman in the dark cafe. If I hadn't seen that, I wouldn't have had the accident. Are you planning to be with that woman after we divorce?
I glared and questioned him. Far from being taken aback, my husband responded without a hint of guilt.
Are you blaming me? I don't know what you're misunderstanding, but my relationship with her is not like that. Do you have any proof anyway?
There was no proof. Knowing this, he smirked triumphantly, and I bit my lip. That ugly smirk erased the last bit of affection I had for him.
That's terrible. Even after what happened to me, you feel nothing. Your ending up in a wheelchair is your own fault due to your carelessness. I don't want to deal with caregiving. Let's get a divorce. I have no intention of cleaning up after you. Dad. There are things you shouldn't say.
We both turned towards the door at the same time. There stood my daughter, trembling with anger.
How long have you been there? It seemed like a serious moment between you two, and I thought I shouldn't interfere in a marital issue, but I can't stand it anymore. I've heard everything. Mom ended up like this because of Dad's affair, didn't she?
My daughter's furious outburst was met with a dismissive snort from my husband.
If you're so concerned, then you can look after her. I have no desire to spend my life caring for someone. I'm out. You're the worst. Say whatever you want. You're not a child anymore. You somewhat understand the dynamics between men and women, right?
My daughter bit her lip. Her eyes filled with anger. Thanks to my daughter's anger, I felt myself cooling down. As I stared at the divorce papers, I asked my husband, "What was everything I've done up to now?" I thought I had been doing my best to support you, but are you ready to discard me now that I'm no longer useful? It's that sanctimonious attitude that's infuriating. Your hospitalization reminded me of the freedom I once had. After tasting that life, there's no way I can go back to how things were. This is a good opportunity. Let's both be free. Fed up with my husband's statement about my accident being a good opportunity, I decided to agree to the divorce. I didn't want to be with this man any longer, but I wanted to take what I could get. When I brought up the division of assets, he visibly became irritated, but we agreed that I would receive all the compensation from the accident, and in exchange for not touching the house, cafe, or any household items, I would receive 60% of our savings. Let's just get this over with. I'll withdraw your share now, so sign the divorce papers in the meantime. After saying that unilaterally, my husband hurried out of the hospital room. In the quiet of the now silent room, I said to my daughter, "I'm sorry you had to hear all that unpleasantness. Don't worry about it. I'm on your side, Mom. But are you sure? With such terms? It's fine. I hate to ask you suddenly, but could you go to my parents' house and pack up my personal belongings? Do you know where everything is? Of course. I've been helping with cleaning and organizing every time I go back home. I also know where the valuables are kept, just in case. Leave it to me." After seeing my daughter off as she left the room, I faced the divorce papers. I wasn't going to let things end on his terms. Though I was determined, I suddenly realized the harsh reality that awaited my husband. Then, in front of him, I signed the divorce papers. He smirked with satisfaction and quickly snatched the paper. "Okay. Now we're strangers to each other." Seeing my husband genuinely pleased, I quietly told him, "Sorry to rain on your parade, but you're probably going to regret this." "No way. If anyone's going to regret it, it's you. No one wants to deal with a wheelchair-bound old lady. Without being able to do anything, you might even end up senile. But don't contact me. We're strangers now. Take care of yourself." After he left triumphantly, I received a message from my daughter that she had finished packing. Decluttering as part of my life's downsizing had paid off, and she finished in a short time. She even sent photos of the contents for confirmation. The box with the valuables was properly included. With this, I didn't need anything else. As I sent a thank you message to my daughter, a friend who is also a regular at the cafe sent a message saying she was coming to visit. Perfect timing. Let's add some flowers to the thorny path he has chosen. The visitor, known in the neighborhood for loving gossip, chattered away even though I hadn't asked. According to her, my husband had been bragging about a winning horse race bet. Apparently, right after our divorce was finalized, he was seen in a town with a woman. Judging by the description, it was likely the same woman I had seen that night. To hear he hasn't opened the cafe since my accident was astounding. I was shocked when I ran into your daughter and heard what had happened. What in the world went wrong? As she looked at me with a mix of curiosity and concern, I tearfully explained the circumstances leading to the divorce. By the end of my story, her eyes were filled with both sympathy and anger. She squeezed my hand, left me with words of strong support, and left the room. Once she was completely out of sight, I gently lifted the pillow and smirked to myself. It was a good thing I had a chance to use the eye drops. Now, what will happen next? About a month after the accident, I was discharged from the hospital. A few months later, having gotten quite used to life in a wheelchair, I went out to a large shopping mall. It was a weekday, so the food court was empty. As I settled into a seat, someone called out to me. "Hey, Evelyn?" I turned around to find my ex-husband, who had aged significantly in just a few months. His hair was peppered with white, and he wore a wrinkled shirt and chinos, looking every bit the part of a disheveled old man. He could barely manage day-to-day life with that appearance. In contrast, I had gotten a short haircut soon after being discharged from the hospital, making myself look neat, and I even put on makeup today. I might say this myself, but I probably look younger than my actual age. You've really changed your vibe. When I was married to you, I hardly had any time for myself between housework and the job. I retorted, to which my ex-husband responded with a forced smile. So, you must be bored out of your mind now, huh? Before you go senile, how about helping out with some work? I knew it. What?
The cafe isn't doing well, is it? My words made his fake smile freeze. It seemed I had hit the nail on the head. I knew it. After all, I was the one actually running the kitchen, the front of house, and the fiancé. My husband, who had spent his time playing instead of working, had seen a significant drop in his skills once he returned. He couldn't remember the cooking steps, the prioritization of tasks was all over the place. And even operating the cash register became a chore. That's why I ended up working ahead of him under the guise of support. Cooking, serving, preparing snacks, mixing seasonings, cleaning dishes, ordering pastries, tea leaves, coffee beans, managing inventory, and even handling tax filings. I took care of all that. It's no surprise things wouldn't go smoothly without me.
Did you enjoy your trip? Why not ask her for help? That woman? I don't know her anymore. When I asked her to help out with the shop, she ran away.
He half angrily said, but his partner was a nightlife worker. Only my ex-husband had been serious. It was just a service for a well-tipped customer to her. Ironically, it was just a fling, as he himself had once admitted. He continued bitterly. For some reason, the regular ladies stopped coming. They used to sit in my cafe for ages, and now I don't understand why they've stopped. Of course. You've turned the regulars against you.
What?
He seemed to dislike the chatty ladies for staying too long, but those women, who stayed and spent money, were our cafe's valued customers. It seems my friend who visited had spread the word about my ex-husband's betrayal. They were also my friends. You think they'd keep coming as usual after their friend was wronged by her husband and ended up in an accident? A cafe run by a husband who cheated and dumped his wife is bound to be shunned. That he couldn't understand this was astounding. I sighed in frustration.
We're short-staffed and have been running at a loss. At this rate, the cafe will go under.
Well, I'm a stranger now. It has nothing to do with me. As I was about to leave, my ex-husband grabbed my wheelchair.
Wait a minute. You must have done something. Otherwise, everything wouldn't have started going downhill all of a sudden.
Caught off guard by his desperate attempt to stop me, it was then that my daughter intervened.
Dad? What are you doing?
Turning towards the voice, I saw my daughter, looking puzzled.
Sophia.
My ex-husband quickly let go of the wheelchair. Trying to close the distance with a forced smile, he started speaking as if nothing had happened.
I hate to spring this on you, but could you consider moving in with me?
What?
We're short-staffed at the cafe, and I can't keep up with the housework either. If you, Evelyn, the former star of our cafe, could fill the gap you left, it would solve a lot of problems. If you agree, I'd let your whole family live in our family home. There's plenty of room, no need to worry. You wouldn't have to pay rent, and eventually, I'd even hand over the cafe to you guys. How about it? It's a good deal, right?
Dad. My daughter smiled before firmly declining.
You've got to be kidding. What? You pushed all your work, house chores, and even your care onto Mom, and did nothing yourself. Now you're trying to play the father card and dump your responsibilities on me? That's too selfish.
My ex-husband was speechless at her harsh words. Without skipping a beat, she continued.
Forgot your own actions while Mom was hospitalized?
After doing such things, you have the nerve to ask this. Think I'd live with a man who recklessly abandoned his wife of 40 years who supported him desperately? Honestly, I'd rather sever this father-daughter relationship than accept any amount of money from you. My ex-husband looked utterly shocked, not expecting such a vehement refusal.
Back then, I was out of my mind.
Well, realizing that is a slight improvement. But living together is out of the question.
Why not?
Because we're already living with Mom.
What?
Yes, after I was discharged from the hospital, my daughter took me to her home. Her whole family had suggested we live together, and I gratefully accepted their offer.
So, even more reason to stay with me. You won't need to bother with caregiving.
Sorry to disappoint. We're not enduring our living situation, we chose it.
Huh? What can she do? She's just a burden.
Forgot what the doctor said? My lower body might be impaired, but my upper body is fine. Since moving in, I've taken over cooking duties.
Oh!
It seemed my ex finally remembered. Caregiving isn't as demanding as you think. It's mostly helping me in and out of the bathroom or car. Plus, with both parents working and only managing to feed our son, having mom cook 3 meals a day, complete with delicious coffee, has kept our family healthy. After 40 years in the food industry, her cooking is unbeatable. Her cafe snacks were always a hit, remember? Seeing my daughter's radiant smile, my ex-husband remained frozen in shock. I exchanged a glance with my daughter and began to leave. Suddenly, my ex-husband started crying out.
I was wrong. Without you, I realized how crucial our daily life and the cafe were. Please, remarry me.
I sighed deeply. My mind was made up. Absolutely not. I firmly decline. As I said this, wait. Please wait. My ex reached out desperately. Quickly, my daughter maneuvered the wheelchair away from him. Shortly after, security arrived, prompted by someone, and my ex-husband was escorted away as he began to cause a scene for being refused. Wanting to avoid further entanglement, we left the mall to dine elsewhere. After the confrontation, I felt surprisingly at peace. 6 months later, I learned through friends that the cafe had closed. My ex-husband had sold the house and tried to multiply that money through horse racing, but suffered great losses. Now, he lives in an older public housing, scraping by on his pension. As for me, I use my free time to run a cooking class, charging only for ingredients. The only cost required is for the ingredients. Any kitchen-equipped place works. The most involvement I have is with elementary schools, where I engage in activities that also serve as community exchange events. Some schools have even started cooking clubs with me as a guest instructor due to the current retro cafe boom. The classic cafe menus from yesteryears are incredibly popular. Despite the unexpected accident that cost me the use of my legs, it has led me to an unimaginably happy retirement. It feels like I'm reclaiming 40 years of myself, and I'm looking forward to living the rest of my life exactly as I please. It all started right after I bought a house with a yard. My husband and my mother-in-law were all smiles as they made an unsolicited declaration of moving in. They're saying they're gonna move in too. If you don't like it, you can just divorce my son. If the mother-in-law is coming, that means sister-in-law of mine will surely follow. They know full well I'd hate this, and yet, here we are. The harassment that's bound to continue even after moving. I couldn't help but shudder. I don't want this. I'm not planning to live with you guys.
You seem to not know your place.
My mother-in-law raised her eyebrows in disbelief. What she pulled out next was a divorce paper. Already signed by my husband. Her face read clear as day, all she cared about was getting the house. Their plan worked out terrifyingly well. I struggled to suppress my laughter. How I must have looked, trembling and looking down. My mother-in-law appeared victorious. I solemnly signed the divorce papers, packed my bags, and left that dreadful in-laws house behind. The day I moved out, I got a nasty call from my former mother-in-law. You've realized it now, haven't you? The former mother-in-law was insisting we meet to talk. Exactly what I wanted. I'd go and give her a piece of my mind. After meticulous planning to put them in their place, I was on my way to the showdown. My name is Tatiana. I work as an office worker at a marketing agency. It was the department head of a newspaper company who introduced me to Ken. Unable to reject the department head's offer due to my vulnerable position. At 29, I ended up marrying Ken after a 6-month courtship, overwhelmed by his persistence. I would curse myself for a long time for making a wrong decision at such a critical moment. From the start, I believe my mother-in-law intended to deceive me. She seemed calm and kind, but once I became her daughter-in-law, she showed her true colors. She dropped the facade of an understanding older woman to reveal the demon mother-in-law beneath.
Hey, Tatiana. What are you dragging your feet for? Didn't I tell you to weed the garden after you're done with the dishes?
There wasn't a single day the screeching voice of my mother-in-law didn't fill the in-laws' house. I was daily filled with dread. Barely managing a sigh in response was all I could muster. After marrying, I reluctantly agreed to live with my husband's family at his insistence. His father had passed away from illness, and his mother had been suffering from a limp for years. He begged me, saying he couldn't bear to leave his elderly mother alone in their old home. But once we moved in, what do you know? The supposedly pained mother-in-law was walking around just fine, claiming it was her duty to train me, harshly, every day. And my husband? No better. Even when I expressed a desire to live separately, he would find an excuse to avoid it. Always under his mother's thumb. Never standing up for me when his mother scolded me.
I'm sorry, my family's got quite the temper. Don't just stand there smiling, help me. I'm really struggling here.
After the marriage, I started feeling intense anxiety and depression. I'd find myself crying unexpectedly or suddenly feeling sick. After seeing a specialist, I was diagnosed with an adjustment disorder. Realizing how negatively living with my in-laws' family was impacting me was truly disheartening. My mother-in-law, uncaring of how I felt, continued to make unreasonable demands.
Don't you dare slack off just because it's your day off. Have you finished cleaning the room? You haven't even gone shopping yet? Make sure you check the sales before you go. Please stop rushing me. I have a headache. I'll make sure to clean and do the shopping later. Don't be so lazy. Do as you're told. You're a daughter-in-law, aren't you?
I wish I could have told her a daughter-in-law is not a maid. Her demands were mostly about the house itself. Clean out the gutters, replace the paper on the sliding doors, deal with the splinters on the pillars. Our family home is really old and falling apart at the seams. When the wind blows, it creaks and sways. Each time it happens, my mother-in-law hurries my husband, begging him to quickly set up a new home. This place is a rental, you know. We're renting it cheap from an acquaintance. Don't you want to live freely in your own home for once? Don't you think so, Ken? I do, but with what I take home, a dream house is just a dream. My mother-in-law, frustrated with her ineffective son. Of course, her irritation is taken out on me, his wife. Cook, clean, weed the garden, take her to the doctor. I'm exhausted from working full-time, but she couldn't care less. It'd be strange if I didn't end up sick. That's how I felt every single day. Half a year after moving into my in-laws' house, a woman came along to make my tough life even tougher. My sister-in-law, Yasmin, returned home after her divorce, bringing her child with her. She was kicked out after saying, "I never want to see your face again." Well, it was my fault. I neglected my child and slept with my husband's colleague. What on earth is wrong with this woman's morals? Seeing me appalled, Yasmin smirked. Just like her mother, Yasmin's actions mirrored her looks. She refused to do any housework and even had me clean her room. Can't help it, right? I'm raising a child. You wouldn't understand since you've never had one. It's harder than it looks. So, I'm counting on your support. Yasmin doesn't work. She lounges around all day. Taking care of her child is an afterthought at best. She just lies on the sofa, doing nothing. Her behavior on weekends is the worst. She leaves her young daughter with me and goes off to the gambling parlor. Apparently, Yasmin has bad company, as she sometimes gathers with them to drink from noon. She doesn't help with the housework at all, a true freeloader. Yasmin would do anything to get money for her leisure. Here's what happened one day. Yasmin handed me a drawstring bag, and when I asked what it was, "That's from her dad. Jewelry, and such."
What? What do you expect me to do with this?
You're so slow. Sell them. And make sure you get a good price, okay? My deceased father's belongings. Essentially all that was left of him. And she's asking me to sell them nonchalantly. It made me sad. Thinking of her using the money for gambling made it even worse. I just couldn't do it, so I explained the situation and handed the whole bag over to Ken. What he did with his father's keepsakes, I don't know, nor do I want to. So many things happened around the time Yasmin came back. My things started to disappear frequently. And it was around then I found out Ken might be cheating. My friend who works at a different company happened to see him on a day off, walking arm in arm with a flashy-looking young woman. I was furious when I heard, "I'm working hard even on my days off, and you're out having fun with some young girl? That's cheating, isn't it? Who is she? Tell me the truth." "It's not cheating. She's just a girl from a strip club." "And how is that okay? Can't you, a married man, stay away from places like that?" Yasmin watched our exchange, laughing uproariously. As for my mother-in-law, she seemed disappointed but didn't criticize Ken much. According to her, a husband's visit to such places is a sign of his wife's lack of dedication. Getting all worked up over that, how embarrassing. The fault is yours. If you'd been more attentive to Ken, none of this would have happened. "I don't agree at all. Isn't that a bit unreasonable? In this house, that's normal. And you know, visiting strip clubs or cheating is like a man's proof of ability. A wife should forgive such things with a big heart." What a failure of a wife. My common sense seemed to be their nonsense. Forgive visits to strip clubs or cheating? Impossible. My frustration only grew. I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. To change this unpleasant situation, I decided to take some action. Yet, my mother-in-law and Yasmin remained the same as ever. Day in and day out, they treated me like some kind of servant. Lying around on the sofa and floor like seals, the two of them would raise their voices the moment they felt hungry. "Hey! Why isn't lunch ready yet? It's already noon." "Don't dilly-dally. Seriously, you're so slow it's frustrating." "Well, why don't you make it yourselves? I've been cleaning the yard and shopping without a moment's rest, you know? Don't talk back. Do you even understand your place as a daughter-in-law?" It seems even having an opinion isn't allowed. Frankly, I was fed up. I wanted a divorce, and fast. But if it were that easy, I wouldn't be in this mess. The person who introduced me to my husband was a manager at a newspaper company we both respected. I had even been asked by my boss not to do anything that would embarrass him. Infuriatingly, my mother-in-law knew this all too well and often used it against me. I was completely trapped. For a while, all I could do was endure. Then one day, my husband's infidelity became an undeniable fact. A colleague from a competitor caught him red-handed. This was the first step in my preparation. I had to make the next move. About a month later, I think. After dinner, my sister-in-law spread out a housing catalog on the table. It was unmistakably the one I had kept in my bag. "Look at this. Looks like Tatiana was planning to buy a house." "Wait. You went through my bag? Why would you do that?" "Just be quiet." "Oh? It's a bit rural but looks like a nice house." "Hey, Tatiana. You should have consulted me about this." The house I had my eye on was a detached house with a yard. Just as my mother-in-law said, it was in the countryside but a pretty nice property. I had already visited the place a few times and met with the real estate agent. When I opened up about it, the three of them finally took the bait. "What? You've gone that far in discussions? You're buying it? It's cheap and spacious, not bad at all. Ken, a man needs to have guts. But, a house with a yard, huh? That's a tough decision. If you're going to be the man of the house, Mom's behind you. I might even help out a bit. Weren't you planning to move out and live with just the two of you?" Before I even had to do anything, my mother-in-law was egging my husband on. What a hypocritical way to put it. As if they'd let me off that easily. When I asked who would be the owner, my husband frowned. "I'm the head of the household, aren't I? It's gonna be in my name, of course. So, we're moving forward with this? Buying this house and moving out together? All right, I get it. I'm a man too. Let's buy that house. Hurry up with the arrangements. My husband finally made up his mind. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law praised his decision. But I didn't miss it. I saw the two of them exchange knowing smiles. A few days later, right after we bought the rural house with a yard, my husband and mother-in-law, all smiles, made an unsolicited declaration of moving in. Mom is moving in too. What? But we were supposed to move out and live on our own. After thinking it over, we decided to live together after all. You wouldn't say no, right? If you do, you're looking at a divorce. Wonder what your boss would say. There it was. Such a cowardly tactic. If the mother-in-law was coming, there was no way her obnoxious daughter wouldn't follow. Imagining the harassment that would surely continue at the new place, I shivered. Absolutely not. I have no intention of living with you guys, not even a little. What? What are you talking about? You don't seem to understand your place. My mother-in-law's anger was visible. A vein throbbing at her temple. What she pulled out was a divorce form, already signed by my husband. Her face said it all. As long as she got the house, nothing else mattered. If you really hate it that much, here. Sign this. Fine, I will. I'll sign it. I want a divorce. I've had enough. Hey, Tatiana. Really, you okay with this? Ken, let her be. A snobby and useless woman like her, living together would only make my blood boil. You're young, you'll find another wife soon enough. Such cruel words. I solemnly signed the divorce papers. My mother-in-law was triumphant. She had no idea how I was feeling. The plan worked out scarily well. I was desperately trying to hold back my laughter. A few days after I moved into my new apartment, my phone kept ringing with calls from my ex-mother-in-law. Checking the calendar, it was just as I thought. Today was their moving day. You've realized it by now. The phone kept ringing non-stop. Classic ex-mother-in-law behavior. Despite ignoring it, she kept calling. I answered the call out of sheer annoyance. She started yelling without even a greeting. You! How could you do this to us? What kind of a place did you trick us into buying? Long time no see. Please, calm down. What are you talking about? I don't quite understand. Don't play dumb. This house. You knew it was defective and you bought it anyway, didn't you? That's it, isn't it? She was right. The house I chose had issues. The ground itself was weak and the land often sank. Even new houses would sometimes have doors that wouldn't close after a few years. Apparently, there were mining tunnels running nearby, which caused the trouble. However, for locals, this was common knowledge. They built their homes on stable land. It was the carefree newcomers who suffered from troubles. This time, I used such a problematic house to trap those three. Colluding with the real estate agent to find a reasonably priced defective house was a struggle. Of course, having my ex-sister-in-law steal the real estate catalog from my bag was part of the plan. I deliberately placed my bag in an easy-to-steal-from spot. Unaware, the three of them fell right into the trap and moved out. Holding back my laughter while signing the divorce papers was difficult. I wanted to spill everything, but I couldn't. I feigned ignorance. A defective house? There's no way. Could it be a misunderstanding? What's with that tone? How dare you? Anyway, come over here right now. No, thank you. Honestly, I never want to see you guys again. What? What did you say? There's no way I'd want to meet that monster family again. Even if they offered me money, I'd refuse. Then my ex-husband came on the line. Hey, Tatiana. Please. Just try to understand us a little. Those words, I'm sending them right back at you. Ken, did you ever consider my feelings? You didn't, right? I've always been isolated, haven't I?
I'm sorry. Hey, where are you now? Tell me where you moved to.
As if I'd tell you. If you ended up coming over, I'd have to move again. Anyway, I want to cut ties with you guys. The discussion remained at a stalemate. Eventually, my ex-mother-in-law started making even more absurd claims. The divorce was invalid, and they were still family, she claimed. I had gotten signatures from Ken on the divorce papers and consulted with a lawyer to proceed with it. Is divorce invalid? Impossible. How far could their lack of common sense go?
Anyway, just come and talk once. We're getting nowhere like this. Please. I'm asking you too, Tatiana. Just once, let's settle this properly. Okay?
My ex-mother-in-law and husband insisted on meeting to talk. Even if I refused, they'd likely keep calling. At this point, there was no other choice. I'll meet them and give them a piece of my mind. Fine. I'll meet you once.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
But I'll choose the place and time, okay? I didn't want to risk being ambushed or followed. I had to maintain the upper hand to avoid any further scares. After careful preparation, I called the three of them to a certain cafe. I arrived 20 minutes late to the cafe I had specified. My ex-mother-in-law and ex-sister-in-law were already furious. And my ex-husband wore a wry smile. Just as predictable as ever.
How dare you make us wait? You're really beyond rude.
I don't want to hear about manners from you. What do you want?
What do you mean, what do you want? Because of you, we're stuck in a defective house. Take responsibility for your actions.
I have no idea what you're talking about. It was your decision to move in together, wasn't it? My ex-mother-in-law was at a loss for words. Seems like she couldn't deny that. She and my ex-sister-in-law had jumped into the defective house situation by themselves. Their previous home had started undergoing major renovations. Meaning, their only option now was that defective house. If you're done, let me say something. I'm going to sue you for emotional distress and seek damages. Be prepared.
What? Damages? Sue me? Why would you do that? Tell me exactly what I did to you.
You drove me to the point of developing an adjustment disorder. I showed them a copy of the medical diagnosis I had received from the hospital. The three of them stared at it intently. Especially my ex-mother-in-law, whose eyes were wide as saucers. She probably never imagined I had seen a psychiatrist. You never consider how your harsh words affected others. It was really hard for me. I felt nauseous, tears would come, it was really tough.
That's because you're too weak. It's your fault for being such a lousy daughter-in-law in the first place, isn't it? Isn't it?
That too. You kept calling me a lousy daughter-in-law. You know, that's considered an insult, which can be punished in prison or a fine.
What? That's an exaggeration.
Exaggeration? My ex-mother-in-law doesn't understand. She doesn't realize how serious her actions were. The extent of her wrongdoing. You also committed criminal acts against me. Remember how you threatened to tell my boss about the divorce? That's blackmail.
Come on. Aren't you being a bit dramatic?
Not at all. You may end up in prison or a fine as well. I won't back down, you know? Wait. My ex-sister-in-law chimed in, her gaze sharper than usual. Maybe you'd call it a defiant look. Typical of a former delinquent. As if she wouldn't be intimidated by such threats.
All I've heard so far is you taking advantage of our mom's ignorance to scare her. Do you have any proof of us insulting or blackmailing you?
I do. Because I've been recording everything.
Recording?
Yes, I had been using the voice memo feature on my phone all along. I had recordings from my entire time at the ex-in-laws. There's quite a lot of audio. I prepared data extracting just the parts where I was verbally abused. Submitting this as evidence would almost certainly secure a conviction for both the insult and blackmail charges. Did you really think I would just take it? Not just you, mother-in-law, but you too, Yasmin. You'll likely be held accountable as well.
What? Why me? What have I done to you?
Think about it. Haven't you committed any crimes? Or are you going to say you never caused me any trouble?
There's no way. Don't be ridiculous.
My ex-sister-in-law insisted she was innocent. I showed her the screen of my smartphone. Her face turned pale instantly. No wonder. What was displayed was a scene of her rummaging through my bag. Looking around suspiciously as she searched through the contents. How disgraceful.
What's that? How did you do? When did you even take that?
Ever since you arrived, my things started disappearing frequently. My stuff, jewelry, clothes, bags. I set up a hidden camera.
That's terrible. What are you doing, going so far?
Appalling. Who's the one being inappropriate here? Shall I also tell you about the penalties for theft? I'll be contacting the police later. My ex-sister-in-law was speechless. Wanting to say something but unable to. She looked utterly helpless. I had a record of what had disappeared from my possessions. With an accurate grasp of the damage, the police and lawyers would be able to move more easily. When I decide to do something, I go all the way. I had decided I would never forgive these three. The last one to face was my ex-husband, who shrugged. Of all of them, he was the one I could forgive the least. I thought marriage was about helping each other. But Ken, it seems you had a different idea. From beginning to end, you were always against me.
Enemy? I never intended that. Not even a little bit. Believe me. Even today, I was trying to mediate as best as I could.
Sure. I've had enough of lies. I don't need any mediation. My ex-husband was a cowardly opportunist. Always siding with the stronger party. Just as he had always sided with my ex-mother-in-law and ex-sister-in-law. And even now. Trying to appease me in any way, hoping to be the only one forgiven. If he had been a bit more of a decent man, maybe I would have continued our marriage. If he had said we should live alone in a different place, I might have gone along. Your affair partner's name is Mariana, right?
What? Why?
How do I know? I had it investigated. I have a friend who's good at this kind of thing. I even have a photo of you and her entering a hotel together. Here, look.
No! Don't show me! Please, don't!
As I attempted to show him the phone screen, my ex-husband frantically tried to block it. He didn't want his mother and sister to see the evidence of his infidelity. As if it mattered. Morals and ethics had long been broken in this family of similar individuals. I put my smartphone and the copy of the diagnosis back into my bag. There was no more evidence that I needed to present to them. My ex-mother-in-law, ex-husband, and ex-sister-in-law seemed to have lost their will to fight. Afraid that if they did anything rash, they would be reported. Too bad, I was fully prepared to consult the police regardless of their actions. You can expect the police to visit you eventually. It's better not to run. Your crime might become more severe. And make sure you don't follow me. Understand?
Tatiana! Don't be so cold. We were husband and wife until recently, right?
Yes. Frankly, marrying you was a huge mistake. I feel relieved now that we're no longer married. If you follow me, I'll sue you for that as well. Don't wait outside my workplace. Don't contact me unless it's something really important. I made a few simple agreements with the three of them and left the cafe. After I exited, the three of them remained downcast. You can't lock a person's mouth. The story of our divorce and the reason being his infidelity and mistreatment of me spread quickly through his company. As a result, my ex-husband ended up being quite ostracized within the company. After all, the mediator had been a manager from a newspaper company we had dealings with. It was only natural that my ex-husband, having lost trust, would be viewed harshly. Unable to bear the discomfort, he eventually resigned. His attempts at finding a new job didn't go well, and his relationship with his mother and sister started to deteriorate. He appeared before me again about a year after our divorce. I was stopped by him on my way back from work, and there stood a disheveled man.
Ken, I didn't recognize you at first.
Yeah. People say I've changed a lot lately. He seemed to be struggling, which was to be expected. Both his mother and sister were convicted and fined, and I had sued him for damages. They must be financially strained now, especially with the loan for the defective house they live in.
How are your mom and Yasmin doing?
They're alive, barely getting by. Both are working now. They have to make ends meet. They always say they want to go back to how things were. Want to go back to living off my and your earnings. Just like always. Parasites, I thought. Cutting ties was definitely the right decision. I expected him to retort, but he didn't. Instead, my ex-husband sighed deeply and said, "I've really messed up. I'm sincerely sorry. I was an idiot. You were right. I should have always been on your side. I must have been out of my mind."
I think your family was out of their minds from the start. Don't be so cold. Please, I'm begging you. Let's live together again. I'll cut ties with that family for good. I mean it. You're all I have.
Oh, really? Too bad. I already have someone else. And even if I didn't, I'd never want to start over with you. As I firmly said this, my ex-husband collapsed to his knees. But any performance to elicit sympathy from me now was futile. Had I been a little less refined, I might have spat on him right there. I left him behind and went on my way home. I never heard from him again after that. The person who informed me about this was the real estate agent who had helped me. The lives of my ex-mother-in-law, ex-husband, and ex-sister-in-law apparently got significantly worse. They constantly blamed each other for their impoverished lifestyle, worsening their relationship. From their house, one could hear arguments and the sound of breaking glass almost every night. They insulted and tormented each other, yet couldn't seem to leave each other. It was nothing short of hell. They became quite isolated in their community, with nobody eager to associate with them. Eventually, they'd probably have to sell the house they can't sell for much and end up homeless with debt. I can clearly imagine the three of them, huddling together under the cold sky, cursing each other. Someday, I'd like to see the miserable state of those who have fallen to rock bottom with my own eyes. Meanwhile, I'm living a blissfully happy life. Thanks to my new partner I once mentioned to my ex-husband. He's a successful salesperson at a major trading company. A mature man who respects others' values, calm and gentle. Plus, he's also divorced like me. Soon, we plan to have a modest wedding. My first marriage was a tremendous ordeal. Even now, I occasionally remember the hardship and almost burst into tears. But whenever I lean on my partner, my heart warms immediately. This is where I belong. It was a long journey, but I finally found my place. Having experienced hardship, I believe I can be kinder to others. I want to live my life positively, using my experiences as a foundation. That's how I feel these days.
Despite my reliable daughter sending me $4,000 every month, what's with the one canned food from you, my eldest son's wife? It feels like harassment.
Out of the blue, I got a scolding over the phone from my mother-in-law, with whom I seldom communicate, for something I wasn't even aware of. The decision on how much to send to my in-laws was discussed and agreed upon with my husband and his sister, Alice. Alice and her husband had said that they couldn't afford to send money for a while due to family circumstances. I hadn't heard anything about suddenly being able to send $4,000, so I was overwhelmed by my mother-in-law's claims.
If you are the wife of my eldest son, you should follow my capable daughter and send cash instead of canned food. If there's a $4,000 allowance already, there's no need for us to contribute as well, right? We'll stop sending money.
A month later, on the usual monthly transfer day, I did as I had declared and didn't make the transfer. As a result, my in-laws and Alice made a huge fuss and stormed our house. Everyone argued their righteousness, but one person's fury led to an outcry. My husband and I met through volunteer activities in our area. I lived in an apartment for single women, and my husband lived in the company's dorm. The volunteer activities we did once a month varied, but most were aimed at beautifying the area. We happened to be in the same group picking up trash together, and we were the third couple to end up getting married from that group. Our fellow volunteers, who had shared hardships with us, gave us a grand celebration, and we started a new life in a new place. We had to move from the familiar area because my husband had to leave the dorm upon getting married, and at the same time, he was transferred. In the new place, we quickly fit in with the local people thanks to our communication skills. Later, I became pregnant and gave birth to twin daughters. By then, my husband had been promoted, and we moved into a larger house for the kids. I've always been skilled with my hands and loved crafting. It all started when my grandmother was struggling to dispose of old scraps, and I asked her to give them to me if she was going to throw them away. I made things like small containers from those materials, and I remember how happy it made my grandmother. The joy of seeing old items being reborn and used, and the smiles of the owners when they get them back, were incredibly fulfilling for me. Then, my grandmother asked me to start making small items, and it became popular among her friends who approached me asking if I could repurpose items for a fee. At first, it was really just covering the cost of materials, but when I casually posted about it on social media, I started getting orders from people willing to pay more than just for materials to have me make them. It was around this time that I felt my craft was recognized, and I made a certain decision. However, after getting married and having children, the time I could spend on my hobby of crafting became limited. But being naturally optimistic, I figured I could make time to create things for my two daughters instead of others. As the twins grew up quickly, the period they could wear children's clothes was short. It seemed such a waste to dispose of clothes that could still be worn, so I used them to make remade clothes and tailored matching dresses and skirts for them to wear. As a result, I encountered more than I could have imagined, but that's a story for another time. My twin daughters were very well behaved, and as they grew, they became less and less of a handful. While they were kids, I was happy to see their growth, but of course I had frustrations. However, as they needed me less, I felt a twinge of sadness, though I should have been happy. I can't quite explain this feeling, but maybe it's a sense of alienation, thinking about the day when they really won't need me anymore. Then one day, out of the blue, I got a call from my mother-in-law. Our relationship was neither good nor bad. We didn't visit my husband's parents often, and since my husband prioritized his work and our family, we only went to their house around the holidays. So, my mother-in-law didn't interfere much with my husband, and she never came over unexpectedly. She usually only contacted us to ask about what we're gonna do for the holidays or if we were coming back for New Year's, but since it wasn't the season for either, I was nervous when I picked up the phone.
Always a nuisance. What's with these monthly annoyances? You must really have a lot of free time,
she yelled right off the bat. I couldn't understand at all what my mother-in-law was talking about and ended up sounding pretty clueless in response. It seems my response just made my mother-in-law even angrier, and she let loose on me.
My capable daughter sends me $4,000 every month, and all you send is one canned food? Are you a stingy daughter-in-law or what? Are you pocketing my son's earnings?
She complained that sending just one canned food a month is a nuisance. Plus, even though it's just one canned food, the box it comes in is pretty big, so she feels deceived by the size of the box every time. She must think I'm laughing at her disappointment from the false hope, wanting to see what kind of parents raised such a malicious woman. Her complaints were endless. My husband and I discussed and decided to transfer money to my mother-in-law's account every month.
We transfer $6,200 to the designated account on the agreed date every month.
I have the receipts saved, and there's proof in the bank statement.
I don't really understand all that. You refuse to send it by registered cash mail, which is why it's your fault. So, I leave the account management to my daughter.
She's well-versed in these modern transactions and takes good care of me, unlike you, who does nothing.
How bad you are. That's why daughters-in-law who come from outside are no good, she keeps complaining. Although my mother-in-law herself came from outside, I don't understand why I'm the only one being criticized. Moreover, it was my mother-in-law who refused the registered cash mail. Because it's expensive and takes days. Why it turned into me refusing it is beyond me. What's even more puzzling is about my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law is a housewife, and considering her husband's income, a $4,000 monthly allowance should be pretty tough. It would require significant cutbacks to keep it up, and realistically, it should be hard to come up with $4,000 every month. Even if my sister-in-law changed her mind and started working outside, I can't imagine her, who proudly declared housewife is the best, actually earning outside. That's when I thought. Maybe my sister-in-law, who manages my mother-in-law's account, is embezzling the $6,200 we send, and pretending it's her and her husband sending the $4,000. I decided I shouldn't have to send money if all I'm gonna get are complaints.
If you're unhappy with our contributions, we'll just stop. We were planning on reviewing the amount anyway, since we'll need more money for the kids moving forward.
It was actually my husband who suggested revising the contributions, but since it comes out of our family's income, I was inclined to agree if he thought it was necessary. While my mother-in-law was ranting on the other end of the phone, I ignored her and hung up. After that, she called a few more times, but I ignored those too. Eventually, the calls stopped coming. Then, the next month, on the day we usually sent the money, I did as I had declared and did not make the transfer. Surprisingly, I received a call from my sister-in-law, Alice. I couldn't believe my mother-in-law, who was only getting one canned food, was prompting her now. But it must have been quite inconvenient for Alice herself. So, I figured she was the one who initiated direct negotiation. Sure enough, as soon as I answered, Alice skipped the pleasantries and jumped right into talking about the money.
Hey, did you forget what day it is? Mom's been on my back about it, so could you please take care of it right now? You can handle it quickly with your smartphone, right?
Though what she meant was to send the money quickly, her tone was as cheerful as could be, not wanting to cause a stir.
Didn't your mother tell you? We decided to stop the money transfers starting this month.
Alice choked up at that. Suddenly, she started stuttering and seemed to lose track of her thoughts, getting flustered.
What? What are you talking about? Mom hasn't told me anything like that. Why would you make such a decision without including me? You know, you're such a capable daughter, sending $4,000 every month to your mom. She was just praising you the other day. Since you can afford to send that much, we don't need to contribute, right? With the twins getting older and costing more, we've decided to save what we used to send as their education fund.
During our talk, it seemed like my sister-in-law, Alice, realized I had caught on to what she was doing. I could hear a sigh followed by a click of her tongue over the phone. She thought I couldn't hear, but I clearly heard her mutter. That old lady, stirring up trouble. She seems aware that she's been spoiled by our mother-in-law, and feels like she can do whatever she wants.
You know that I can't send $4,000 to Mom every month, right? You're aware of that, aren't you?
That's right. The whole reason we, as a couple, started sending a large sum of $6,200 was because Alice and her husband couldn't afford to send anything to the parents. She wanted us to pay more, just for a while. That's what she meant. It was supposed to be just for a while until they could manage to regularly contribute a certain amount. It should have been something like that. It's been quite some time since that conversation.
If you're still sending $6,200, doesn't that mean you have some financial flexibility? It's tough for us. I married a man with no earnings, and our finances are really tight.
So, she argued that it shouldn't be a problem if they cut down by $4,000. It's not Alice's money anyway, whether it's $4,000 or even $1. She shouldn't even be talking about it. I couldn't believe she didn't understand this basic thing. I felt like telling her to go back to elementary school in my mind.
The remaining $4,000 was given to Mom, and that should be enough. You were pretending it was you who paid, right? Why didn't you say it was from us? Then Alice said that it didn't matter who the money came from, as long as it was coming. However, her saying it doesn't matter is what started this big issue, and she's not even aware of how serious it is. Her reckless remarks continued. I mean, I've even pretended that you were sending canned goods for Mom, right? Well, it's just one can, but that one costs a few $1,000s. It's a luxury can that you can't often eat, so Mom should be satisfied with that. Alice, barely holding back her laughter, seemed pleased with herself. It turns out that our mother-in-law doesn't realize she's been getting luxury canned goods. She thought they were just regular cans that you could buy at the supermarket and complained to me about it. Hearing Alice's terrible attitude and way of thinking again, I felt even stronger that we should not continue the financial support. I have no intention of resuming the payments. What? What's that supposed to mean? Are you abandoning me? Well, the payments were meant for our parents-in-law, not you. That's only natural, right? Oh, I see. You're abandoning me then? Don't come crying to me later. Alice yelled in a shrill voice and spat out what sounded like threats before hanging up unilaterally. A few days later, without any prior notice, my mother-in-law and Alice showed up at our family home. Our in-laws live about a 30-minute drive away, but Alice lives out of state, so we usually only meet during family gatherings. What could possibly bring Alice all the way here? I was puzzled about why they had come. As soon as my mother-in-law saw me, she approached with a stern face and no greetings. It sounds like you've been bullying my daughter? Stop picking on the weak and just resume the payments right away. Hearing my mother-in-law's demands, I realized Alice must have twisted the story to suit herself. Yet, despite knowing what Alice had done, my mother-in-law blamed me entirely. If you resume the payments, everything will settle down. I might not get the full amount, but I'll get enough, and it will improve my daughter's life. It's all good things. Then, my father-in-law appeared. It seems he drove my mother-in-law and Alice here. I was relieved to see his face, hoping for some support, but something seemed off. What's going on? This still hasn't been resolved? That's right, you know. She is unexpectedly stubborn. A woman should be humble and obedient, it's more charming. We have various payments coming up, and we planned around the monthly support we were counting on. Just go ahead and pay it. To my dismay, it turned out that my father-in-law was of the same mind as the other two. I felt intimidated because of his muscular and imposing figure. Thinking that if he resorted to physical measures, I wouldn't be able to say anything. What happened to all that fire you had just now? It's sad to see you crying, but it's your own stubbornness that's to blame. Alice insisted that I had no chance of winning against the three of them, so I should just admit defeat and transfer the money quickly. If you don't do it before your husband gets back, who knows what might happen to your twin daughters? She even threatened. I couldn't disregard such comments when my daughters were brought into it. If you tattle to your son about this, it won't just be the grandkids, I'll make sure you can't even walk outside. They all had smug smiles on their faces. Alice grabbed my smartphone and urged me to make the transfer quickly. My father-in-law started looking around the room for anything valuable he could possibly take. I bowed my head and wiped my tears, and Alice muttered a small "I won." She was so focused on my gestures that she didn't notice the slight relaxation of my mouth. You can come out now. Reacting to my words, my husband stepped out from the closet in the room. His veins were bulging on his forehead with anger as he glared at his mother and two siblings. They had assumed that only I would be home at this time. They had no idea that my husband had been hiding in the closet, listening to the entire conversation. Caught off guard, the three of them were speechless. Their mouths agape in utter stupidity. I never thought it would be this bad. To think that my own parents and sister could be such scum. It's pathetic. Overwhelmed with anger, shock, and sadness, my husband was unable to control his emotions. Although his face and words expressed rage, His emotions were a mix of disbelief and sorrow as tears flowed. I had always longed for a warm family environment. A home filled with constant smiles and the cheerful voices of children. That was always my dream. There was a reason for it. I lost my parents in an accident when I was young. Miraculously, I survived, but since my parents had eloped to get married, no relatives wanted to take me in. Especially my maternal relatives, who were furious that their precious daughter had been taken away so abruptly, while my paternal relatives just kept apologizing. My parents didn't have individual funerals. Instead, there was a joint ceremony for all those who died in the accident. At that funeral, the two families met and bickered over what to do with me. Seeing this, my paternal grandmother, insisting that a child should not be blamed, decided to take me in. Then, the paternal relatives targeted my grandmother with unkind words and declared they would not provide any assistance. I was raised by my paternal grandmother until high school. My grandmother left me a significant sum of money, insisting that no matter what, I should attend college, and I honored her wishes. My grandmother was a very generous person, always surrounded by friends. After her passing, it was her friends and neighbors who helped me become who I am today. Actually, she too had longed for a bright and happy family. She had married my grandfather on her parents' orders without knowing love. It was a loveless marriage, so my grandfather was hardly home, leaving the family feeling cold. I always wished my grandmother could have experienced a joyful family life. Although I couldn't fulfill that wish for her, I promised to become happier and happier as a story to tell when I eventually join her. Continuing my grandmother's belief that picking up trash brings good fortune, I kept doing it after she was gone. And that's how I met my husband. I believe our relationship was a connection she had made for me. Having witnessed the tension between both sides of my family in my childhood, I tried my best not to have a bad relationship with my in-laws. To me, my in-laws represented the parents I never knew, so I wanted to cherish them. Honestly, we couldn't afford to send as much as $6,200 just from my husband's earnings. That amount included a lot of my own sentiment. When I was single, I used to post my handmade remakes on social media and connected with various people, which reminded me to post the clothes I made for my daughters again. Being busy with childcare, social media was my only way to connect with the outside world. It has the advantage of connecting with someone regardless of time, and finding sympathy with others facing similar struggles was encouraging. People who had bought my remakes during my single days were happy to see my handiwork on social media again and even asked if I would take orders. In the midst of this, I received a request to see actual pictures of the children wearing the clothes. Indeed, the image is quite different when you see the clothes on a mannequin compared to being worn. However, I hesitated to post pictures of my own children online. During this exchange, a clothing manufacturer approached me with a proposal to use models for the photo shoot. Apparently, they had been fond of my work for some time and had been following the positive comments about it. They suggested partnering with them would not only save time on production but also protect personal privacy, and they wanted me to consider it. When I discussed it with my husband, it turned out that this manufacturer had dealings with his company and was trustworthy, so we went together to their office and signed a contract. I initially thought it was just a representation agreement, but it actually evolved into launching a new brand. The launch was successful from the start, and when the topic of sending money to my in-laws came up, I suggested contributing a bit myself, which led to the total of $6,200. After explaining why he could send such a large amount, my husband expressed his anger physically. "How dare you trample over such thoughtful efforts by my wife?" "But I didn't know that." "You didn't? Do you have any idea how hard it is to earn money? Have you ever earned $6,200 in a month yourself? The household budget is tight, and you can't make the effort to contribute, even with a part-time job? Someone who steals my wife's kindness isn't family at all." He told them he didn't want to see their faces again and physically threw my sister-in-law, Alice, out of the house. My mother-in-law, seeing Alice being thrown out, felt threatened and suddenly changed her attitude, apologized. "Please forgive us.
I'll scold my daughter harshly, so please don't stop the payments. Even a few $1,000s would be fine. Quiet! It's clear you're only apologizing because you want money. We might as well be cutting ties, so no more payments. Don't ever show up in front of our family again.
Even my mother-in-law was kicked out. I thought my husband wouldn't stand a chance against my physically imposing father-in-law, but surprisingly, he too was quickly thrown out. It seems that all that muscle was just for show. Afterward, the new brand I was working on continued to grow successfully. Although it was initially online only, the popularity of the designs meant they often sold out instantly, and we started to offer them in stores as well. With the ability to see and try on the actual products, sales increased even further. Currently, it's only in major cities, but we are starting to consider expanding nationwide. As a result, things have gotten busier, and I often find it challenging to manage household chores and childcare, but my husband, Tom, has been a great support. I am incredibly grateful to him, and he says, "They are my daughters, after all it's only natural." Furthermore, he jokes that he's getting in good graces now before dads become annoying to their kids someday. Raising kids isn't just about pampering them, I think. But seeing Tom joyfully interact with our daughters makes me think it's okay if I am a bit stricter, balancing his indulgence. It makes parenting enjoyable, and it's a reminder of how wonderful family can be. Tom had actually looked up and found that my maternal grandmother is still alive and well. I hold no grudges against my parents' relatives, but I'm not ready to meet them yet. However, I feel that a day will come soon when I will visit my maternal grandmother with my family. It seems that my in-laws had sternly demanded that my sister-in-law, Alice, and her husband contribute financially. After being so lenient with Alice, they drastically changed their attitude and insisted she find a job, even if it's part-time. I heard from the neighborhood gossip that they even went so far as to apply for night jobs on her behalf without her consent because daytime jobs don't pay enough. However, Alice resisted and missed her job interviews. Apparently, Alice is just an average person without the skills to flatter men, and it showed on her face. There were rumors that she was not hired just from her resume picture. As a result, my in-laws tried to force Alice to work and send them money from her salary, but it didn't work out, and they are living on a tight pension. My mother-in-law is healthy enough to work if she wasn't so picky about jobs, but she has been a housewife since getting married and has no intention of earning money. There was a time when Alice's husband questioned the source of an unexpected $4,000. Alice claimed it was money earned from an online business and insisted she had the right to spend it as she pleased. Her husband, having read an article about housewives earning supplemental income through crafts like handmade goods, believed Alice's claim without any doubt. In this recent uproar, it was revealed that Alice was lying. Moreover, when Alice's husband, John, discovered that she had been embezzling the money I was sending to help my in-laws, he vehemently condemned her character and actions as unthinkable for any decent person. John had been considering taking on night jobs just to scrape together some money for the support payments when this incident happened. Frustrated and disillusioned with Alice's lack of cooperation, he saw this revelation as an opportunity and told her he wanted a divorce. He expressed that he couldn't stand to breathe the same air as such a cruel person and kicked her out of the house. She would be forced to work if she returned to her parents' home, but she has nowhere to go and is currently missing. No one in the family seems inclined to look for her. What the heck? That's one ugly bride. I'd love to see what her parents look like. These were the first words my in-laws said upon seeing my face, making me involuntarily exclaim, "Huh?" I had a bad feeling about visiting my in-laws' house from the start. I pretended not to notice the slim chances that David's parents would be reasonable people, and I had come this far. But hearing these insulting words about me now, I'm reminded how foolish I was. Well, you see it, right? I was shocked too when I first met her. She said she felt complex about her looks, but I never imagined it'd be this bad. Even David said something unbelievable. Could it be that David had been mocking my appearance from the beginning? Thinking this, I felt so frustrated I could scream. There's no way I can go through with marrying David without saying something. I need to change this situation somehow. With determination in my heart, I quietly slipped my hand into my pocket, ready to take action. My name is Linda Miller. I'm 30 years old and work as a public relations officer at a major food company. Honestly, the path to get here wasn't easy. I almost gave up many times, but I finally made it. Even now, thinking back makes me tear up. Ever since I was little, I've been called ugly by my classmates. With a small nose, single eyelids, thick lips, and freckles all over my cheeks, I'm far from being called beautiful. Now, it may seem like a minor thing in life. But society still judges people by their looks, and it was only natural that I developed a complex about my appearance. During school, I grew my bangs long to avoid eye contact and walked around looking down all the time. The dark aura I emitted made it understandable why my classmates used me as their stress relief. Being called ugly or gloomy was the lesser of the evils. At worst, my shoes were hidden or my gym clothes were torn to pieces, so it's no wonder my spirit was crushed. In high school, I decided to change myself and studied relentlessly. Even though I was still bad-mouthed in high school, I didn't care and kept my focus forward. Thanks to that, I got into a top private university and landed a job at a well-known food manufacturer that everyone knows. It's been 2 years since I started working in the PR department. I've recently started using a dating app and have a date with a man this weekend. What kind of man will he be? How will he react to my looks? It's a bit scary, but if possible, I'd like to try dating too. Until now, I've lived thinking I could never date because of my complex about my appearance. But maybe this time, I can move forward. That's why I decided to take this step. The weekend I had arranged to meet a man through a dating app had arrived. I dressed up as best as I could, applying my makeup more meticulously than usual. I spotted the man I was supposed to meet at our rendezvous point and mustered the courage to approach him. His name on the app was David, so I tentatively asked, "Are you David?" "Oh, are you Linda?" "Nice to meet you, I'm David." David recognized me and greeted me with a big smile. "Nice to meet you, please take care of me." First and foremost, I was relieved that David didn't recoil at my appearance, so his smile was very comforting. "I've got a reservation at a restaurant, shall we go?" David, seemingly accustomed to such meetings, led the way to the restaurant with confidence and without any hesitation. I was still nervous about meeting someone new, and I followed David, watching his back as we walked. At the restaurant, we each ordered something we liked. My real name is David Taylor. I work as the sales director, Chain Corporation, an auto parts manufacturer. Oh, and I'm the sales director at this young age because my dad is the president. David casually mentioned something incredible during his introduction. Just hearing the word auto parts manufacturer made my heart skip a beat. Since Chain Corporation is a well-known company to anyone. That the president of Chain Corporation was David's father was significant. His app profile mentioned his income, but I hadn't imagined he was the sales director at Chain Corporation. Wow, the sales director at the famous Chain Corporation? That's impressive. My name is Linda Miller, and I work in public relations at New Wave Company, a food company. When I introduced myself similarly, David reacted with exaggerated surprise. "Really? Well, that's impressive too." I wasn't sure how genuine he was, but being praised for the position I worked hard to achieve was genuinely pleasing. "No, I'm nothing special." "You're more impressive." When I praised David, he smiled happily again. After that, we talked a lot about our hobbies and had a great time. David was the kind of person who made even the dullest stories enjoyable, nodding exaggeratedly and asking questions, making it easy to talk to him. He didn't seem put off by my appearance at all. After talking for about an hour, I found myself thinking that I might be able to, perhaps move forward with him. Actually, I have always been complex about my looks. As the atmosphere warmed up, I decided to share my complex with David. David looked at me intently and then expressed genuine curiosity. Is that so? I don't think you need to feel that way. You seem to be working hard on yourself. Oh, sorry if that sounded presumptuous. David's words eased into my heart and melted it. No, thank you. I felt my heart warming up. I felt confident that I could make it work with David. Acting on intuition, I confessed to David on our second date. David, not expecting me to make the first move, initially looked surprised but then said shyly, I was about to say the same, which was very endearing. Our relationship seemed to progress smoothly. David continued to treat me kindly even after we started dating. I realized that I had a habit of unconsciously bragging about my wealthy family, but David was willing to be in a serious relationship with me, someone who's not exactly cute, so I could overlook that minor flaw. It was on our 1-year anniversary that David proposed, saying, "Let's get married." I was shocked, having not expected a proposal so soon. But I had hoped to eventually be with David, so I happily accepted.
Thank you. I'm so happy I met you, Linda. I'm really happy too.
At that moment, I felt on top of the world, truly happy with David's proposal. It might have been the peak of my happiness. Because from that day, David's behavior towards me began to change dramatically. I hadn't realized it yet. The month after our engagement, we decided to move in together. David quickly bought a condo in a high-rise, and we began living there even before our marriage. Is it okay to live in such a nice place? Aren't the mortgage payments tough? Oh, the mortgage is fine. My family is rich. But in return, you'll need to handle all the household chores. I'll be coming home around 10 p.m. on weekdays, so I won't have time. Your company is pretty lenient, right? So, I'll leave the household stuff to you. David rattled this off in our new apartment. I was suddenly burdened with all the housework, and I was completely stunned. Moreover, his tone seemed sharper than usual. Usually, he spoke to me gently, never like now, quickly making demands. Half bewildered, I nodded, thinking, well, he's the future successor of Chain Corporation, so I guess he's busy. But a thorn-like feeling was already pricking at my heart. From that day, David's attitude changed rapidly. First, he would check every corner of the apartment as soon as he woke up. He couldn't stand any dirtiness, and if he found even a speck of dust, he'd lash out, "Hey, what's this dust? You skipped cleaning yesterday, didn't you?" I was dumbstruck and couldn't respond. I had vacuumed and wiped down the place just yesterday. There might be a bit of dust left. But there was David, glaring at me furiously. Really, you're useless. I thought you'd make a great housekeeper at least. Well, there's plenty of time for you to improve your skills. What? As I voiced my confusion, David quickly left for work. What was all this about? The kind David I knew was treating me like just a housekeeper. I felt a stir of turmoil in the depths of my heart, and I couldn't focus at work all day. Moreover, if I didn't have dinner ready and served by the time he came home, he would start yelling. Even trivial things he could do himself, he wouldn't be satisfied unless I did them. Even though my company is lenient, I often don't get home until about 7 p.m. After preparing meals and doing other chores, naturally, I had no time left for myself. Is this cohabitation really okay? A whirl of doubts in my mind turned into waves of great anxiety pressing on my heart. Maybe I had drawn a really bad lot after all. I finally realized how foolish I had been. But contrary to my feelings, David was steadily preparing for our marriage. One Friday night, David came home earlier than usual but still didn't help with the chores, instead telling me, "We're going to my parents' house this Sunday to announce our engagement." What? We had only been engaged for a month, so I was surprised. Typically, the woman's family is visited first for marriage introductions. Yet here we were, suddenly preparing to visit David's family, and I wasn't ready. Shouldn't we visit my parents first? You know, it's customary to visit the woman's family first, right? I tried to persuade David with this argument. However, he seemed unbothered and responded, "What?
It doesn't matter. We're going to visit your family eventually anyway. But David's forceful approach left me with a flicker of unease. What would my parents think if they knew we visited his parents first? Would they trust a man who didn't respect the custom of visiting the bride's family first? Ignoring my concerns, David began to outline what to keep in mind during the visit. My parents are strict, so don't mess up. Also, you'll quit your job after we marry because they believe a wife should not work if she isn't capable of managing household duties properly. David informed me as if it were obvious. This shocked me, and I asked, "What do you mean?" "Just what I said. Linda, you'll quit your job and become a homemaker. Lucky you, being with a rich son like me. You'll have an easy life," David said with a mocking smile. I was taken aback by this sudden demand. I haven't agreed to quit my job. I like my work, remember? I told you that when we met. I intend to keep working even after we're married. Determined not to be dictated to about my career, I confronted David with my true feelings. However, he took my protests lightly, responding with nonchalant nods, yeah. Whatever you say, but this is already decided. Too bad. David grabbed a bottle of sake from the table, poured himself a drink, and started sipping it with a flushed face. I realized then that arguing with David now was futile. If I married David, I would be forced to quit my job. This fact cast a dark shadow over my heart. With my unease unresolved, 2 days passed, and Sunday morning arrived. Reluctantly, I slipped into the black dress I had prepared. I applied makeup carefully enough to avoid looking unattractive, hoping the first impression would be decent. It would be the first time meeting my in-laws. Though I had heard they were strict, I hoped they would be more reasonable than David. I even wished they would stop David from forcing me to quit my job. David was humming tunes from the morning, eagerly preparing to leave. It seemed he was more excited about seeing his parents' reaction to me than introducing me to them. After getting ready, we immediately headed to David's parents' house. It was only 2 train stops away from our apartment, very close indeed. I wished I had more time to mentally prepare, but cruelly, the train reached our destination in just a few minutes. A 10-minute walk from the nearest station, David's parents' house stood impressively. It really looked like a small castle, and seeing it made me swallow hard. This house cost $1 million. Impressive, right? David boasted, puffing out his chest as he energetically opened the front door and entered, saying, "I'm home." I followed him inside and timidly said, "Excuse me for intruding." His parents were waiting in the living room and smiled at David, saying, "Welcome back." Then they turned to me and scrutinized me from head to toe as if appraising my worth. "What's this? Quite an unattractive bride. I'd love to see what her parents look like." These were the first words David's parents said upon seeing me, and I couldn't help but exclaim, "What?" I had a bad feeling about this visit from the start. I had ignored the low likelihood that David's parents would be reasonable. But hearing these words of insult directed at me made me realize how foolish I had been. Right? I was shocked too when I first met her. She said she was self-conscious about her looks, but I never thought it'd be this bad. David unbelievably added. Was it possible that David had been mocking my appearance from the beginning? The kind responses he had given me when I first confessed my insecurities about my appearance were all lies. Thinking this, I felt so angry I could burst. There was no way I could go through with marrying David without saying something. I need to change this situation somehow. Determined, I quietly slipped my hand into my pocket and prepared to take a certain action. "May I use the restroom?" I asked his parents, who dismissively waved me away as if shooing a stray dog, saying, "Go ahead, quickly." Feeling humiliated, I stepped out into the hallway and headed towards what I assumed was the bathroom, pulling out my phone from my pocket. I called someone. She listened to my situation sympathetically, and I felt relieved after the call. After ending the call, I turned on the voice recorder on my phone and returned to the living room nonchalantly.
Upon my return, David's parents insulted me again. Where did you find such a woman? It's a shame. We were looking forward to meeting David's bride-to-be. She has to be introduced at the company, too. They'll make fun of her. His mother said with a smirk, covering her mouth with her hand, though her eyes weren't smiling. To them, I was merely the wife of the heir to the auto parts manufacturer, Company C. No doubt, introducing someone unattractive like me as their daughter-in-law was displeasing to them. Come on, that's a bit harsh. It doesn't matter what she looks like, you guys told me to catch someone useful. Besides, I plan to have Linda quit her job after we marry. She's really lucky, being with a rich guy like me. Is that so? But now that I think about it, appearances do matter. After all, she's going to be the face of our company. And with that face. At David's father's words, his mother let out a crude laugh. Who could have imagined being insulted to this extent? Tears welled up in my eyes as I listened to their complaints. Oh, please, come quickly, come quickly. As I silently wished this, the doorbell at David's house rang simultaneously. Who is that? Did you order a delivery? Delivery? I haven't ordered anything recently. Then who is it? Go check it out. Urged by his father, David went to the door and opened it. I heard David's voice asking, "Who are you?" followed by a confident, fearless reply, as someone entered the house. Hey, you can't just. David tried to stop the person, but they walked confidently into the living room. I saw the face of the newcomer and let out a sigh of relief. It was my mother, who had come right after I called her. Hello, I'm the unattractive bride's mother. She said with a smile, greeting them without showing any anger, though I could tell she was very upset. Oh, you are. David's parents' faces stiffened upon seeing my mother. What's going on? Why is Linda's mother here suddenly, and why do you two look so shocked? David was the only one confused by my mother's unexpected arrival. But the reason David's parents were frozen was not just because my mother had shown up unannounced, but because they recognized who she was. What? Why? Is this some kind of prank? David's parents' tone became slightly more polite, perhaps out of nervousness. This is no prank, my mother replied calmly in front of the flustered in-laws. I rushed over because I heard that my daughter and her fiancé's parents were insulting her. And wasn't it you who said you wanted to see the bride's parents? Perhaps sensing the anger underlying her calm tone. David's parents gasped in shock. What's going on here, Linda? David, unable to follow the conversation, turned to me for clarification. To him, it must have seemed like my mother just showed up and his parents were merely surprised by her appearance. I took a deep breath and decided to reveal the truth. Oh, you're meeting her for the first time? This is my mother, the CEO of auto manufacturer Alameda. I said it firmly, and David's face turned pale as he muttered, auto manufacturer Alameda? Could it be? It seemed David finally grasped the situation. My mother's company is a major client of David's father's company. For them, she is their biggest client. My mother was celebrated as a beautiful CEO. She had appeared on television several times, so many would recognize her as the CEO of Alameda Auto. Despite David working at his father's company, he hadn't recognized that the CEO of Alameda Auto was my mother. What? A's CEO is Linda's mother? That can't be, she doesn't look like you at all. I get it, this must be some strategy to surprise us, right? Why would you go to the trouble of having the CEO come here? A flustered David accused me of lying. While dumbfounded, I sighed and answered. I don't have such connections. This woman truly is my mother. I take after my father. Don't you think you judge people too much by their appearance? Seriously? David and his parents, who had been relentlessly calling me unattractive, probably never imagined my mother would be so beautiful. Moreover, once they realized she was the CEO of a major client, their attitudes suddenly became extremely deferential. How funny. To think that the CEO of Alameda Auto was Ms. Linda's mother. Had we known, we would have welcomed you properly from the start. That's right. We never intended to fight with you. Although it's late, please have a seat. My wife will make some tea for you right now. David's parents, who suddenly became very formal, urged my mother and me to sit on a luxurious sofa. However, my mother did not budge from her spot. Smiling pleasantly, she said, "Thank you, but I prefer standing." Her calm tone and smiling face somehow gave David and his parents an indescribable sense of dread. Their bodies visibly began to shake. "Furthermore, I have nothing to discuss with you. We've decided to end our business with your company as of today." My mother's demeanor tightened, taking on the protective stance of a parent. Her announcement to end the business relationship shocked everyone present, including me. End the business relationship? Please, don't say that. We hope to continue our partnership. That's right. Your company will surely suffer without our business, won't it? The three of them frantically attempted to negotiate. But my mother's expression only grew more severe. Finally, she dropped her pleasant facade and spoke in a lower voice. "No, the decision to stop business is final. I no longer wish to associate with people who belittle my daughter as unattractive or worse." We did not mean to belittle her. Come on, don't say such outrageous things. David and his mother protested, their arguments sounding incredibly insincere to me. I stepped forward, addressing David and his parents boldly. "Unfortunately, I have evidence here that you've been mocking me." "Evidence?" David's father looked puzzled, tilting his head. I made sure he saw as I pulled out my smartphone from my pocket. Then, I started playing the voice recorder audio that I had recorded earlier in their home. Upon hearing their own disparaging voices, the three of them looked at me in utter disbelief. "What does this mean?" David shouted at me. "It means exactly what you've heard. Since you've been mocking me and my mother, I could not just stay silent and marry into your family. I am calling off our engagement." "What?" David was clearly not expecting me to break off our engagement. He was visibly shocked and lost his balance. "It's too late for that now. You're supposed to marry into our family." "Yes, that's right. It's very fortunate for us to have the daughter of the CEO of Alameda Auto as our daughter-in-law. Our future is secure." His mother suddenly switched to a more cheerful demeanor, as if trying to embrace the situation. Disgusted by their inability to understand, I refuted my mother-in-law's words. "No. As I said before, I will not marry David. I don't want to become family with people who belittle me. If you don't accept the cancellation of our engagement and the termination of business with your company, I will upload the recording to the internet. I'm sure that would send your credibility and stock prices plummeting." My calm but angry statement turned their faces pale. "Please, don't do that. If we goes under, our family will be lost." "Yeah, that would be a disaster." His parents chimed in, imagining a future where Company C collapses, starting to tremble. "So, will you agree to cancel the engagement and the business deal?" I pressed David further. He stuttered again, that's still seemingly trying to resist. Even now, at this point, was he still trying to put up some fight? I sighed heavily in frustration. "What's with your indecisive attitude?" "The main reason I want to call off our engagement is because you ridiculed my appearance. And now, knowing your company might be in jeopardy, you beg pathetically. Don't you have anything to say to me? And to you, my in-laws, judging people by their looks, I don't want to be part of a family like that. I'm especially disgusted by how quickly you changed your tune once you found out my mother is the CEO of Alameda Auto. I will definitely not marry David." Having my mother's support allowed me to vent my feelings openly. David and his parents could only stare as I spoke. "Sorry, my bad. But think about it, marrying a rich guy like me would make your life easier, right?" David's last plea seemed to assume I was only interested in money. I clenched my fist and shouted back. "Unfortunately, I'm not interested in money. My mother runs her company, and I have a respectable job myself. I don't need more money. I'd rather find someone who truly values me. Don't ever contact me again. Goodbye. With that, I turned on my heel and left David's house with my mother. We ignored his cries of "Please don't spread the recording." What I do with that recording is my prerogative. I never want to see David's face again. My mother and I exchanged looks and sighed in relief. As I declared, I ended the engagement with David. It turned out he had been dating to quickly get married. He thought an unattractive woman like me would be easy to convince. He was just looking for a convenient woman to do housework, making me a perfect target. But unfortunately for David, I was not the person he thought I was. I take pride in my work and have no intention of marrying just to be demeaned. Thus, his plan miserably failed. My mother indeed ended the business with David's father's company. Without a major client like ours, it saw its management deteriorate. Public trust plummeted, and the stock prices dropped significantly. Moreover, it was discovered that my mother-in-law had been embezzling company funds. She thought a little here and there wouldn't matter, but over the years, those little bits accumulated into a sum too significant to ignore. Now, with the business situation worsening, the amount of money my mother-in-law had embezzled was putting immense pressure on the company. But that's not all. David and his father had always treated their subordinates poorly. With the deteriorating management, employee dissatisfaction exploded, leading to a wave of resignations. Ultimately, with their future in jeopardy, David quickly sought refuge by moving to another company. It was almost a family-run business, likely aiming to prevent a collective collapse. However, David's condescending attitude was quickly spotted by interviewers at other companies, and he struggled to find employment. In the meantime, their company continued its decline, and there was no position left for David to return to. Now, still burdened with the mortgage payments for our former high-rise condo, David is probably scrambling to make ends meet with part-time jobs. I never needed to release that recording situation to deteriorate this far. The significant impact of Alameda Auto's withdrawal and the cost of angering my mother became starkly evident. While it's unfortunate for David, he essentially reaped what he sowed. I can't help but think he deserves to suffer for his actions. As for myself, I decided to undergo cosmetic surgery. It was a bit scary, but inspired by stories of actresses who transformed beautifully through surgery, frequently discussed in the media, I took the plunge. After the surgery, I hardly recognized myself. I thought I looked as pretty as my mother did in her youth. With this new face, I feel more vibrant than ever. At work, a male colleague from the sales department has even asked me out for drinks. I don't know what the future holds, but with a fresh start and a new me, I'm ready to give my all to both my career and my love life.
Hola, suscríbete a Historias Vitales para no perderte nuevas historias. Mi esposa había estado trabajando en su proyecto especial durante 4 meses ahora. No era su proyecto personal, pero ella era la persona principal y responsable de su éxito. El proyecto estaba diseñado para salvar a su empresa, Bixler Enterprises. Los últimos 4 meses habían sido difíciles porque se vio obligada a trabajar duro. Era importante tanto para ella como para la empresa. Había una buena posibilidad de que Bixler Enterprises quebrara si el proyecto no se completaba. Sara tenía una licenciatura de Albrecht y un MBA de Wharton. Era la más inteligente de la familia. Yo empecé a trabajar como mecánico de autos justo después de la secundaria y después de 21 años seguía siendo mecánico de autos. No me importaba porque me gustaba el trabajo y pagaba bien. Era suficiente para pagar la universidad de Sara y criar a 2 hijos. No vivíamos lujosamente, pero estábamos bien. Los niños ya se habían mudado, y las cosas iban bastante bien con nuestros ingresos. Sara quedó embarazada 3 meses después de casarnos a la edad de 18 años. Durante los primeros años de nuestro matrimonio, vivimos con mis padres. Ellos tenían una gran casa vacía ya que 4 de mis hermanos se habían mudado. Eso significaba que teníamos una niñera mientras Sara completaba sus primeros años de universidad. Debido a 2 embarazos, la carrera de 4 años le llevó 6 años completarla. Fue difícil, pero lo logró. Siempre tuve trabajo y nunca me faltó trabajo extra si lo necesitaba. Después de que Sara se graduó de Wharton, alquilamos nuestro propio lugar. Tuvo ofertas de trabajo de varias empresas grandes, pero todas requerían que nos mudáramos. A mí no me importaba, pero Sara quería quedarse cerca de casa. Por eso decidió trabajar en Bixler Enterprises. Pagaba bien, pero lo más importante, le daba responsabilidad y la oportunidad de avanzar. Sara era una empleada trabajadora y dedicada. La presentación es el jueves en el Hotel Dicen en Filadelfia. Tomé unos días libres en el trabajo para ayudarla según fuera necesario. Al final, todo lo que logré fue hacerle algo de comer cuando llegaba a casa. No sabía nada sobre su trabajo, ni tampoco quería saber, los negocios corporativos de alto nivel me aburrían. Empresarios de Europa, Asia y América del Sur venían aquí, la empresa pagaba sus boletos de avión y proporcionaba habitaciones en el Hotel Dicen mientras estaban aquí. Era caro como el infierno, y por algunas cosas que Sara había dicho, la empresa estaba sobreestimando sus finanzas. Su presentación era importante para ella, para la empresa y para más de 200 empleados. Hasta el martes por la noche, todo iba bien. Sara llegó a casa con un traje nuevo, un traje gris con una blusa blanca. Desplegó todo lo que necesitaba en la cama de la habitación de invitados. Cuando se trataba de la limpieza de la casa, ella era normal, pero cuando se trataba del trabajo, era meticulosa. No entendía por qué necesitaba sacar su ropa interior de lujo, pero no dije nada. Además de su traje para la presentación, tenía varios vestidos de cóctel lindos para eventos sociales antes y después del evento. Siempre había evitado tales eventos, pero me sentía obligado a ir con ella si ella quería que lo hiciera. Me agradeció la oferta, pero dijo que no era necesario. Todos los materiales y equipos que necesitaba estaban guardados ordenadamente en el maletero de su Volvo. Antes de salir del trabajo, ella misma conducía el coche para asegurarse de que todo estuviera en perfectas condiciones. Tenía todo el día miércoles para prepararse y toda la noche del miércoles para socializar con sus invitados. Sara era tan buena en lo que hacía que sentía que habría sido mejor si simplemente me hubiera mantenido alejado de ella. Finalmente, había terminado. Lo había revisado y vuelto a revisar todo. Todo lo que necesitaba ahora era una ducha caliente y una buena noche de sueño. Supongo que mi error fue que empecé a revisar sus cosas después de que Sara comenzara a ducharse. Pensé que estaba ayudando, pero resultó ser lo contrario. Estaba moviendo cosas en la cama cuando un pequeño sobre blanco cayó del bolsillo lateral de su bolso de maquillaje. Una carta de una farmacia, pero no del tipo que solemos usar. Dentro había 10 pastillas. No tenía idea de qué era, Pren, y las instrucciones eran confusas. Si es necesario, tomar una pastilla y luego una segunda pastilla 12 horas después. Pensé que podría ser algo que ella había conseguido para la ansiedad o los nervios, pero las instrucciones no tenían sentido. La receta estaba escrita a su nombre el lunes. Volví a poner el sobre en su lugar mientras ella terminaba de ducharse. Decidí que quería saber más sobre Pren antes de contarle sobre ello. Por supuesto, si lo mencionaba, significaría que estaba revisando sus cosas. Odio los dilemas. Mientras Sara se preparaba para dormir, fui a nuestro ordenador doméstico y busqué. 10 minutos después, me uní a mi esposa bajo las sábanas. Pasé toda la noche despierto, preguntándome por qué mi esposa había recogido una receta para la píldora del día después, especialmente después de que me hicieran una vasectomía hace 10 años. A la mañana siguiente, me levanté temprano, pero no estaba descansado. Di un largo paseo, esperando que despejara mi mente. Me dirigí hacia casa con reticencia, temiendo lo que podría hacer o decir cuando llegara allí. Mi hijo Joe se unió a la Marina después de la escuela secundaria y estaba en su primer año en San Diego. Nuestra hija Gloria se casó con su amor de la infancia el año pasado y acababa de mudarse a Dallas. Eso dejaba solo a Sara y a mí. Echaba de menos a los niños, pero esperaba envejecer con mi esposa. Ella era la única mujer que me había interesado, y ahora todo estaba. Si Sara estaba teniendo una aventura, lo ocultaba bien. Por supuesto, nunca la vigilé. Nunca miré sus correos electrónicos o llamadas telefónicas. No tenía razones para hacerlo. No tenía forma de saber qué estaba haciendo en el trabajo o después del trabajo. Confiaba en ella completamente. Ion, ¿dónde demonios has estado? ¿Quieres huevos o algo? No, solo café. No me sentía con muchas ganas de hablar. ¿Qué pasa, cariño? Solo son 3 días. Puedes venir si quieres, pero te aburrirás como una ostra. No, realmente no quiero ir, pero odio dejarte sola. Me preocupo cuando no estás aquí. Es muy dulce, querido, pero estará bien. No voy a salir del hotel en todo este tiempo. Pasaré la mayor parte del día asegurándome de que la sala de conferencias esté lista, y esta noche tendré una agradable charla con nuestros posibles clientes. Mañana, probablemente ni siquiera tendré la oportunidad de ir al baño. Llegaré a casa lo más temprano posible el viernes. Te prometo un gran fin de semana si sabes a lo que me refiero. Todo eso suena bien, pero no puedes culparme por preocuparme. Soy un mecánico de autos, y tengo una esposa hermosa y exitosa. A veces tengo la sensación de que estás menos interesada en mejorar nuestra situación familiar que en avanzar en tu carrera. Detente, maldita sea, Ion. Siempre he respetado lo que haces para ganarte la vida y nunca he insinuado lo contrario. Criaste a 2 grandes niños y me pusiste a través de la universidad. Eres un gran esposo, un gran padre y un buen proveedor, y nunca olvides eso. Terminé mi café mientras ella recogía la mesa. ¿Quieres que te llame? No, no es una buena idea. Tendré el móvil apagado, y voy a apagar el teléfono de la habitación por la noche para poder dormir. Te llamaré siempre que pueda. La ayudé a cargar el coche, era tan meticulosa con eso como con todo lo demás. Trabajando, le llevaría 3 horas llegar al hotel Dicen. Me quedé en el porche y la vi marcharse. No me molesté en preguntarle por las pastillas. Pasé el resto de la mañana en el porche. No recuerdo haberme preocupado tanto como ahora. Me sentía pequeño e insignificante. Me sentía fuera de mi liga. Era un tipo de pueblo con un trabajo mediocre y una esposa exitosa. Era una combinación equivocada. Debería haberlo notado antes. Me sentía estúpido. El mejor traje que tenía era una chaqueta azul y un par de pantalones. Al menos tenía algunas corbatas, aunque tenían 10 años de antigüedad. Acababa de terminar de vestirme cuando sonó el teléfono fijo. Oye, cariño, solo quería avisarte de que llegué bien. ¿Tuviste un buen viaje? Supongo que el tráfico no estaba demasiado denso. Estuvo bien. Te llamaré esta noche. Ahora tengo que irme. Estoy en la habitación 714, Sara. Puedo estar en casa de mis padres o en la de mis hermanos esta noche si quieres llamarme a mi móvil. De acuerdo. Suena el teléfono móvil. Te quiero, tengo que irme. Me tomé mi tiempo para llegar a Filadelfia. No fui directo al Dicen, primero me detuve y compré un filete con queso. Prometí hacer una larga noche. No estaba seguro de qué iba a hacer. Estacioné en el garaje del hotel y simplemente esperé. Tarde o temprano, tenía que entrar en el hotel. Simplemente no podía decidir cuándo hacerlo. El sonido de mi teléfono celular me ayudó a tomar mi decisión. Ion, solo quería avisarte de que todo se ha arreglado. Ahora voy a bajar para encontrarme con algunas personas y cenar. No olvidaste nada, ¿verdad? No, todo está bien. Tengo todo en mi habitación para mañana. ¿Necesitas algo? No, Ion, relájate. Voy a apagar mi teléfono. Te llamaré mañana por la mañana. ¿De acuerdo? Ríe, diviértete. No es divertido, Ion, es trabajo. No parecía estar demasiado fuera de lugar. El vestíbulo, el restaurante y las salas de conferencias estaban llenos de gente, así que pude pasar desapercibido. Había un folleto pequeño y bonito que mostraba el diseño de todas las habitaciones del hotel. Me paseé por las diferentes habitaciones y me detuve en las paredes, mirando alrededor entre la multitud. No tenía ni idea de qué haría si Sara me veía. Lo averiguaría si y cuando eso sucediera. Encontré un tablero de eventos que enumeraba todas las habitaciones que estaban siendo utilizadas por los diversos grupos. Bixler Enterprises no tenía habitaciones disponibles para el miércoles por la noche. Esto me pareció interesante. Sara había dicho que no iba a salir del hotel, pero ahora no estaba tan seguro de eso. Había 3 comedores, familiar, informal y de alta cocina. A Sara no le gustaba mucho cenar con niños, así que fui primero al comedor informal. Solo me llevó 5 minutos asegurarme de que no estaba allí. Tuve mejor suerte en el salón gourmet, era una acogedora mesita encajada en la esquina, el tipo de mesa que la gente reserva para tener un encuentro privado. Sara llevaba un vestido de cóctel negro con un escote pronunciado y perlas, se veía elegante y su acompañante parecía apreciarlo. Conocía a algunas personas con las que trabajaba Sara, y él no era una de ellas. Me resultaba familiar, pero no había forma de que pudiera recordarlo. Había muchas sillas libres, así que no tuve problemas para cruzar la sala. Había velas y pequeños candelabros de cristal en las mesas. Apagué la mía y le dije al camarero que me molestaba por el glaucoma. Pedí el plato de pollo de siempre y me acomodé. El camarero me sirvió el café por tercera vez. Disculpe, el tipo en la mesa de enfrente me parece muy familiar. ¿Sabes quién es? Sí, ese es Malcolm Eugene Foote. Es miembro del Consejo Municipal, se espera que se postule para el Congreso en los próximos años. ¿Es esa su esposa con él? Es muy bonita. No, esta es la primera vez que la veo. Siempre usa esa mesa para señoras especiales, si me entiende. Simplemente le sonreí y pedí la cuenta. Nunca había visto a Sara tan sensual con un hombre antes. Parecía captar cada palabra que decía, como si fuera Dios o algo así. No estaban haciendo nada inapropiado, pero tampoco era platónico ni profesional. Cuando me fui, estaban terminando su segunda botella de vino. Ahora entendía por qué se había llevado su lencería elegante. Me acomodé en una esquina del vestíbulo para que no me vieran. 10 minutos después, salieron del restaurante. Ella le tomaba la mano mientras caminaban por el vestíbulo hacia el ascensor. Observé cuidadosamente los indicadores de piso. Que el ascensor se detuviera en el 3er piso era una buena señal, significaba que no lo había llevado a su habitación. Era una mala señal cuando el ascensor no llegaba al 7º piso, significaba que ella fue a su habitación. Por si acaso me equivocaba en algo, me senté en el vestíbulo y observé el ascensor durante 1 hora. La gente entraba y salía, pero Sara no estaba entre ellos. Saqué mi maleta vacía del coche y me dirigí al mostrador de recepción. Aunque podía demostrar que era su esposo, me costó trabajo conseguir una tarjeta llave. Se dieron después de llamar a la habitación, pero nadie respondió. Finalmente, estaba en camino a la habitación 714 con la tarjeta llave. Ni siquiera encendí las luces al principio, simplemente me senté en la oscuridad de la habitación durante más de 1 hora. No fue difícil asegurarme de que no regresara a la habitación. Primero, empacé todas sus ropas y pertenencias personales. No dejé nada atrás. Revisé el paquete de Preven, todavía quedaban 10 pastillas en el tocador. De manera muy ordenada, estaban todos los artículos que necesitaría para su presentación al día siguiente. Comencé a llenar la maleta. Había 24 carpetas promocionales especialmente encuadernadas y otras 20 carpetas regulares, todas ellas fueron a la maleta. Un proyector digital fue lo siguiente, seguido de una computadora portátil. Tomé su bolso y su celular, que había dejado en la habitación. Todo lo que tenía consigo era un bolso de mano y probablemente un tubo de lápiz labial. Di una vuelta por la habitación tan cuidadosamente como lo hizo ella para asegurarme de no perder nada. Una vez satisfecho, dejé las llaves del coche y mi anillo de bodas en el tocador. Aparte de esos dos objetos, la habitación estaba completamente vacía. El ascensor se dirigió directamente al estacionamiento, no tuve problemas para llevar 2 maletas, y 20 minutos después, estaba en la autopista rumbo al norte. Pasaban las 3 de la madrugada, no tenía idea de que había pasado tanto tiempo. 1 hora o 2 después, sonó mi teléfono celular, la identificación de llamadas mostraba el número del listen. ¿Ion? Sí, ¿dónde estás? Estaré en casa pronto. Eso fue todo lo que dije. Hubo silencio en el otro extremo de la línea. Los vendedores tienen un viejo dicho, el primero que habla pierde. Pareció una eternidad antes de que ella hablara. Ion, lo siento. No preguntó nada y simplemente colgó. Apagué mi teléfono, era obvio que había regresado a su habitación. Más tarde ese día, tenía que dar una presentación que salvaría a su empresa y le daría un ascenso. Metí las maletas en el desván del garaje. Sara nunca iba allí y nunca pensó en buscar algo allí. Por supuesto, en este punto, estoy bastante seguro de que no importaba. Primero, recogí todas mis ropas y pertenencias personales. La mayoría de los hombres tienen sus propias herramientas, generalmente es un requisito para el trabajo. Pasé por la tienda, cargué las mías en el Subaru y recogí mi último cheque de pago. Para entonces, los bancos ya estaban abiertos, no tuve que hacer ninguna manipulación financiera complicada. Simplemente retiré todo el dinero de mis cuentas. Almorcé en Hagerstown, Maryland. Tenía suficiente dinero para vivir durante unos años, pero sabía que estaría buscando trabajo muy pronto. Sara y yo éramos parecidos en eso de que a ambos nos encantaba trabajar. La voy a extrañar. Pasé un par de horas en las cuevas del Uray y alquilé una habitación cerca de Whitewell. No tenía idea de qué iba a hacer. Era sábado, y me encontré sentado en el acuario de Chattanooga, observando la naturaleza que nunca había visto antes. Pasé unas horas simplemente relajándome y decidí que era un buen lugar para estar. Compré un pase anual para el acuario y, para la hora de la cena, tenía un lugar donde quedarme. Era un remolque móvil en el parque, pero estaba amueblado y era económico. No necesitaba mucho. La primera cosa que haría el lunes por la mañana sería conseguir un trabajo. Un buen hombre de mantenimiento siempre puede conseguir un trabajo, especialmente si está dispuesto a trabajar duro. Podría permanecer discreto hasta que fuera el momento de renovar mi licencia de conducir o las etiquetas del coche. Me preocuparé por eso cuando llegue el momento. El domingo por la tarde, llamé a Gloria. Me sentí obligado a informarle sobre lo que estaba sucediendo, pero Sara ya se lo había contado. Fue bastante franca con Gloria sobre lo que había pasado. Dijo que había engañado, que la sorprendí, que me fui y que ella perdió su trabajo. Me sentí mal porque ella perdió su trabajo, pero ese era el precio que tenía que pagar. Le pedí a Gloria que le dijera a Josh lo que estaba sucediendo la próxima vez que hablara con él. También le dije que la llamaría aproximadamente una vez al mes para verificar cómo iban las cosas. No le dije dónde estaba. Para el mediodía del día siguiente, tenía un trabajo. En realidad, estaba a poca distancia del parque de remolques, con el Waffle House a mitad de camino. ¿Qué más podría querer un hombre? No sé cómo manejaron el papeleo, pero me estaban pagando $20 por hora sin hacer preguntas. Estaba feliz, y ellos también. Ni siquiera tendría que tocar el dinero que traje conmigo. Unos 2 meses después, Gloria me informó que Sara se había mudado de la casa y estaba viviendo con sus padres. Gloria no sabía nada más, pero estaba feliz de que estuviera estable y le estuviera yendo bien. Josh me llamó desde San Diego solo para informarme que iba a hacer un crucero. Era técnico en aviónica en un portaaviones, intentó explicar qué hacía exactamente, pero estaba más allá de mi comprensión. Nunca supe mucho sobre cosas técnicas. Ambos tuvieron cuidado de no decir nada malo sobre su madre, aprecié eso. Después de eso, todo siguió como siempre. Comencé a hablar con Gloria al menos semanalmente, Josh y yo comenzamos a enviar correos electrónicos regularmente. Gloria hablaba regularmente con Sarah, pero decía muy poco sobre lo que estaba haciendo o dónde estaba. Nunca presenté la solicitud de divorcio, y parece que Sarah tampoco lo hizo. Tengo una licencia de conducir de Tennessee y las etiquetas en el Subaru. Comencé a frecuentar un bar local un par de veces al mes y tuve encuentros casuales, 2 mujeres se alternaban como mis compañeras nocturnas regulares. No buscaban compromisos, y yo tampoco, parecía funcionar bien para todos nosotros. La vida era buena. Eso fue hace mucho tiempo, y gradualmente olvidé a Sarah. Con el tiempo, el Subaru comenzó a darme problemas, había olvidado cuánto tiempo había pasado. Tenía más de 200,000 millas. Estaba reflexionando sobre esto con una jarra de cerveza un día cuando me di cuenta de que habían pasado casi 5 años desde que me fui de casa. Mantuve un contacto cercano con ambos hijos, Gloria ya tenía 2 hijos propios en este momento y quería que los visitara. Josh casi se casó con una mujer tailandesa, pero en el último momento, se negó. Por lo general, trabajaba 6 días a la semana y usaba el domingo para recuperarme del sábado por la noche, no había ninguna buena razón para que alguien llamara a la puerta de mi remolque a las 6 de la mañana de un viernes. Su grosería fue recompensada por un hombre medio desnudo abriendo la puerta, los calzoncillos del día son repugnantes, y la dama en la puerta, juzgando por la expresión en su rostro, estuvo de acuerdo conmigo. Ella apartó la mirada, pero su compañero no parecía impresionado. Norm habría usado pantalones, pero en un momento como este, los invitados me molestaron. Estamos buscando a John Terrell. No los conozco. Me llamo David Simmons, y esta es mi esposa Mara. Tenemos un problema y esperamos que nos puedas ayudar. Lo siento mucho, no trabajo a altas horas de la noche. Si necesitan algo relacionado con su auto, tendrán que ir a la tienda. Esto provocó varias miradas en blanco y finalmente una respuesta. No tiene nada que ver con tu trabajo, es más un problema personal. ¿Podemos entrar? El interior del remolque lucía desordenado, rara vez tenía invitados, así que rara vez lo limpiaba. Incluso mis novias insistían en que fuéramos a su lugar. Hagan como en su casa, déjenme ponerme los pantalones enseguida. Al entrar en el dormitorio, dejé la puerta abierta solo para mostrarles lo hospitalario que soy. También me puse una camisa. ¿Les gustaría tomar café? Solo tomará unos 10 minutos. Aparté algunas cosas del sofá para que pudieran sentarse, no hubo respuesta a la pregunta del café. Tenemos una hija adoptiva de 4 años y otra de 2 que necesita un trasplante de médula ósea, y esperamos que nos puedas ayudar. Estamos dispuestos a pagarte si es necesario. ¿Con mi médula ósea? No, queremos usarla y estamos dispuestos a compensarte por cualquier inconveniente. Creo que quieren comprarla. Estaba actuando como un listillo, y de repente me di cuenta de ello. Estas personas eran serias, tenían un problema real y estaban buscando ayuda. Lo siento mucho, no quise interrumpir. Por favor, continúen. Nuestra mejor oportunidad de encontrar un donante es un familiar cercano. Eres nuestra mejor esperanza. Mira esto. No quiero ser un grosero, pero creo que se equivocaron de persona. ¿Cuándo nació su hija? Cumplirá 5 años en julio. Marche Simmons habló por primera vez, y sonó sincera. Odio ser el portador de malas noticias, pero me hice una vasectomía hace 15 años. No hay forma de que pueda ser su padre. ¿Por qué tu nombre estaba en el certificado de nacimiento? No puedo responder eso, tal vez deberían preguntarle a su madre. Esa afirmación fue recibida con silencio. Sentí pena por estas personas, pero no sabía cómo ayudarles. ¿Cuál es el nombre de la madre? Sarah Lise Terrell. No encontraba las palabras. Tal vez no debería haber tomado esas malditas pastillas de ella, por supuesto, entonces esas personas no tendrían una hija en absoluto. Todo lo que pensaba que había superado el dolor, y aquí está de nuevo, viejos recuerdos de mi esposa teniendo relaciones sexuales con ese maldito político de Filadelfia. Estaba empezando a olvidarlo todo, y ahora estaba de vuelta. Maldita sea. Ahora entiendo y pido disculpas por mi grosería e insensibilidad. Haré todo lo que esté en mi poder para ayudarles. En primer lugar, porque no puede Sara hacerse un trasplante de médula ósea. Médicamente, no puede. ¿Por qué no? Es madre, tiene que ser una donante adecuada. Ella es una donante adecuada, pero está demasiado enferma. Los médicos se negaron siquiera a considerar utilizarla. ¿Enferma de qué? Está muriendo de insuficiencia hepática. Le quedan menos de 6 meses de vida. Esto no tiene sentido. Siempre ha estado perfectamente sana. Además, no creo que un hígado enfermo le impida donar médula ósea. El hospital no aceptará su firma en el formulario de consentimiento. ¿Estás diciendo que hay algo mal en su cabeza? Ambos me miraron en silencio, sabían la respuesta, pero no querían decirlo. En ese momento, no quería que se sintieran aún más incómodos. Hace 10 minutos, no me importaban, pero ahora sentía que tenía que protegerlos y ayudarlos. ¿Cómo sucedió esto? ¿Podría alguno de mis hijos ayudar? Quizás, pero pensamos que eras nuestra mejor esperanza. ¿Por qué no van tras su padre, su verdadero padre? Pensamos que eras tú. No tenemos ni idea de quién más podría ser. Sara no nos dijo nada sobre otro posible padre. De hecho, ella no estaba en condiciones de explicar nada, agregó Mara. Obtuvimos la mayoría de nuestra información de la agencia de adopción. Tuve que preparar café y hacer pis, permítanme un momento. Dejé a mis invitados sentados mientras preparaba el café. Solo tomó unos minutos. Mientras se preparaba, fui al baño, algo que necesitaba hacer urgentemente. Traté de ser discreto, ya había avergonzado lo suficiente a Mara. ¿Dónde viven? En Westchester, Pensilvania. Les haré una oferta. Si les digo quién es el verdadero padre de su hija, deben prometerme que lo perseguirán sin descanso hasta obtener lo que desean. ¿De qué estás hablando? El padre de su hija es un político prominente en Pensilvania. Por supuesto, negará todo y probablemente les proporcionará documentos legales para detener sus esfuerzos. Si acuerdan presionar lo suficiente para que él admita que la niña es suya, podrán avergonzarlo y obligarlo a hacerse un trasplante de médula ósea. Eso es lo que quieren, ¿verdad? Sí, claro, pero ¿cómo hacemos eso? No lo sé. Soy mecánico. Trabajo con metal para ganarme la vida. Creo que la mejor manera sería utilizar la televisión, la radio y los periódicos. Los políticos harán cualquier cosa para evitar una mala publicidad. ¿Tienen amigos que puedan ayudar? Bueno, ahora ambos estaban sonriendo. Debo haber dicho algo que les dio esperanza. Creo que podemos hacer esto. ¿Quién demonios es él? Malcolm Eugene Foote. Se postula para el Senado de los Estados Unidos. Apuesto a que hará cualquier cosa para evitar una mala publicidad. El café estaba listo, pero David y Marshall no podían esperar para llegar a casa. Antes de irse, les dije cómo ponerse en contacto con Gloria y Josh en caso de que los necesitaran. Estaba seguro de que ayudarían. También les pedí que me dijeran dónde estaba Sara. Probablemente estaría en Pensacola antes de que ellos regresaran a Westchester. Me corté el pelo y compré una camisa nueva. Sara era una tramposa que arruinó mi vida, pero aún así quería lucir bien cuando la viera. Era otro remolque, pero esta vez era un bonito doble nuevo. Allí estaba su Volvo con una llanta desinflada y un parabrisas roto. La mujer que abrió la puerta no era Sara, parecía que la habían empapado fuerte y la habían dejado empapada. Tenía al menos 45, tal vez 50, y debió haber tenido una vida difícil. La falta de maquillaje no ayudaba y simplemente se veía horrible. No tuve la oportunidad de abrir la boca. Caray, si no es John Terrell. Nunca esperé verte aquí. Tuve que usar la vieja línea, me estás poniendo en desventaja. Sherry Hart. Pasa, entra. ¿Quieres una cerveza? No, pero gracias. Estoy aquí para ver a Sara. Sherry cruzó la habitación y se detuvo en el buffet del comedor. Aquí está, John. Mírala todo lo que quieras. Su mano señalaba una urna de latón que estaba en el centro del buffet vacío. Supongo que llegué demasiado tarde. No me moví, solo me quedé mirando el contenedor frente a mí. ¿Puedo tomar una cerveza ahora? Sara se mudó a Pensacola después de dar a su bebé en adopción. Compró el remolque con el dinero que recibió de Bixler Enterprises después de que la despidieron. Tenía una participación en las ganancias, 401k, y vacaciones y días de enfermedad. Eventualmente, consiguió un trabajo en una fábrica local de prendas de vestir donde trabajaba en el departamento de envíos. Allí fue donde conoció a Sherry. Sherry alquilaba una habitación de Sara. Cada centavo que Sara ganaba iba para el alcohol. Empezó con vino y gradualmente pasó a bebidas más fuertes, las más baratas. Eventualmente, perdió su trabajo debido a su alcoholismo y se vio obligada a usar sus ahorros. Nunca salió con nadie ni salió a ningún lado. Sherry se quedó con ella, pagó sus servicios públicos y compró alimentos que Sara no comía. Le llevó más de 3 años quitarse la vida. Increíblemente, ella tenía un testamento y me dejó un doble remolque y un Volvo. Sherry explicó que Sara estaba tan angustiada por lo que había hecho que simplemente se rindió. No intentó evitar el embarazo ni siquiera terminarlo. La adopción se había arreglado meses antes de que naciera el bebé. Nunca volvió a trabajar, excepto en los trabajos clandestinos que hacía mal. Sherry dijo que Sara no parecía tener ambición ni propósito en la vida. Sara hablaba mucho de mí pero tenía miedo de intentar contactarme. Gloria le dio mi número, pero nunca me llamó. Era como si su aventura de una noche la hubiera lastimado más a ella que a mí. Estuve allí durante 2 semanas y luego vendí el remolque de Sherry por $1 y obtuve $3,000 por el Volvo. 2 días después, estaba en Westchester visitando a mis nuevos amigos David y Marche. Malcolm Eugene Foote resistió al principio, pero David y Marche lo presionaron hasta que cedió. Insistió en pruebas de ADN, que demostraron que era el padre. Para salvar la cara, más o menos lo obligaron a someterse a un trasplante de médula ósea, que fue exitoso. La carrera política y la vida familiar de Malcolm no dejaron una impresión favorable. Su caída en las encuestas fue tan rápida que el partido lo reemplazó por otro candidato unos meses antes de las elecciones. Su esposa solicitó el divorcio y fue muy pública al respecto. Sara y yo estamos viajando ahora a Dallas para ver a Gloria y a mis nietos. No sé cuánto tiempo mantendré a Sara conmigo, probablemente hasta que tenga a alguien.